It was hard to imagine how powerful the billions of tribulation clouds were if they were compressed into one point. Boom! The fingernail-sized blood-colored divine tribulation rushed straight at Han Fei, and Han Fei was fearless. In a battle of two wills, either you win or I lose. Han Fei opened his mouth and sucked the fingernail-sized divine tribulation beat into his body. Bang! The last tribulation exploded in Han Fei's body, as if it wanted to shatter him to show the might of the heavens. And Han Fei's body was abnormally solid at this moment. Although his body had completely collapsed, it didn't dissipate. It was just a little transparent because of the power of this divine tribulation. In fact, these flesh and blood were still surrounding Han Fei, looking as if Han Fei had had a special physique. More importantly, the speed at which Han Fei's bones swallowed energy was beyond imagination. The power of the exploding blood-colored divine tribulation was constantly swallowed by Han Fei. Myriad Daos are my body. Supreme is my will. Supreme bones, condense. Buzz. Han Fei's Dao bones were undergoing a transformation. When the supreme bones were formed, Han Fei immediately stepped into the Dominator realm. At this moment, Jiang Bai's eyes lit up. He knew that his chance had come. Jiang Bai immediately roared, "Rise!" Han Guangqiu and Jiang Linxian immediately tried their best to pressure him. They were a little puzzled. In such a short time, Jiang Bai shouldn't be able to break through their siege. What was he up to? However, to everyone's surprise, on the land where the eternal race was swallowed by the creation star compass, the towering bloodline divine tree rose from the ground. The tree erupted with terrifying power. It was also a Dominator-level divine tree. What? Impossible. The bloodline divine tree is a functional divine tree. Even if it can give birth to will, how can it listen to you? Han Fei, who was swallowing the blood-colored divine tribulation, looked down and then turned to look at Jiang Bai. Ha ha ha. Jiang Bai laughed out loud. I told you that the concealing divine seal was given to you by me. The demon purification potsvine is just bait. I thought that the sea of stars was about to collapse, and you had no hope of clearing the supreme path. I didn't expect you to give me a big surprise. Fuse. The boundless branches of the bloodline divine tree enveloped Han Fei, and the tree seemed to come to life. And Jiang Bai, who was besieged by Han Guangqiu and Jiang Linxian, began to collapse and fade. In the next moment, the bloodline divine tree realm emitted a dull buzzing sound. No matter how talented you are, you're just my nutrient. I have the ability to become a dominator in the first place. Why should I become the tool of the myriad races reincarnation? I can give birth to billions of bloodlines, so I can naturally give birth to the strongest bloodline in the world. In that case, why don't I become the strongest in the sea of stars? Ha ha ha. At that moment, everyone was shocked, including the dominators of the eternal race. They had always thought that Jiang Bai was a heavenly talent of the eternal race and had grown up to be a dominator. However, they didn't expect that the bloodline divine tree was his original body, and Jiang Bai was just a clone. The dominator of the eternal race, who was suppressed by the 10 Yama kings, also roared, Ji Heng, if you have such strength, why do you watch the eternal race be destroyed? Jiang Bai scoffed at such a question. Stupid. If I can surpass the dominator realm, what's a mere race worth? Not to mention a race, I can even destroy 10 Races, 100 races, or 1,000 races. At this moment, Jiang Bai seemed to have gone crazy. Han Fei. Do you really think I don't know that the path of reincarnation is with you? I'm just waiting for you to grow up. I have the first bloodline in the Sea of Stars. Today, I'll swallow my Dominator clone and then your supreme body. The 3 Dominators will become one. I'll become the first person in the history of the Sea of Stars to surpass the Dominator. Even if it's ominous, what can it do to me? Ha ha ha. At that moment, Han Guangqiu opened more than a dozen pages of the heavenly book of creation in a row, all of which had the power to shake a Dominator. That was not all. Han Guangqiu's eyes were bloodshot as he roared, I contain 1,000 rivers with my body. Han Guangqiu tore off a page of the heavenly book of creation and went crazy. His momentum instantly soared, and a tide seemed to be surging in his body, frantically attacking the Dominator realm. Jiang Linxian also jumped up, and the primordial seal pressed down from the top of the bloodline divine tree. On her wrist, the primordial purple jade bracelet turned into a divine ring and wrapped around Jiang Bai. Yes, Han Guangqiu and Jiang Linxian had always had trump cards, so they were not afraid that Jiang Bai would break through their siege. However, they never expected that Jiang Bai, who was in the Dominator realm, was actually a clone created by the bloodline divine tree. It wasn't just Jiang Bai. At that moment, a silver-haired man in green with black pupils and a dignified expression suddenly appeared from the creation divine prison. This person crossed billions of seas of stars with a single step and waved his hand, instantly fusing the primordial 8 fierce swords into one. Law enforcement, heavenly punishment. He, are you finally willing to show up? When you could easily control the creation mystic yellow tower and the primordial 8 fierce swords, I had guessed who you were. Jing Guangming. Unfortunately, you came out late. Swish. Faced with the joint attack of Han Guangqiu, Jiang Linxian, and Jing Guangming, the bloodline divine tree, which was Jiang Bai, suddenly fused into Han Fei's body. Immediately, Han Guangqiu and Jiang Linxian's faces changed drastically, and they quickly stopped. Jiang Bai was not stupid. There was no need for him to withstand the siege of 3 Dominator-level powerhouses at the same time. As long as he entered Han Fei's body, Han Guangqiu and Jiang Linxian would definitely stop attacking. As for Jing Guangming, the primordial seal blocked Jing Guangming's heavenly punishment sword. Jing Guangming frowned slightly and waved his hand, and the heavenly punishment dissipated. He stood calmly in the void with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, if I kill him now, I's fusion technique can be broken. Han Fei, choose for yourself. At this moment, all the battlefield seemed to be collapsing. Senior brother Azure Dragon rushed out of the chaotic battle with an ugly expression. Shiman Linglan finally appeared from the predicament of the world, but she didn't panic or be afraid immediately. Instead, she immediately shot out the blade of hope, turning into 2 streams of light that rushed at Han Fei. Buzz. The blade of hope sank into Han Fei's body without any resistance. At the same time, a void appeared in front of Shiman Linglan. Just as she was about to punch out this void, she suddenly heard Han Fei suddenly look at Jing Guangming and grin. I don't have to choose. Han Fei's body began to disintegrate again, crushed, and turned into dust. He didn't care about such a collapse at all. In the shattered flesh and blood, there seemed to be 2 blood shadows condensing tenaciously, but in the blink of an eye, the 2 blood shadows began to collapse. Han Fei sneered. Jiang Bai, is this your last plan? Jiang Bai roared, impossible. You haven't become a dominator yet. How can you crush my body? Han Fei said leisurely, you don't understand the meaning of the word supreme at all. That's right. Your eternal race grows by stealing. How can you understand it? I haven't advanced to the supreme realm yet, but it's not that I haven't advanced to the dominator realm. Originally, these blood-colored tribulation clouds were really not enough. Fortunately, you offered your 2 dominator bodies. In this case, it can be barely enough. Han Fei and Jiang Bai's flesh and blood were all crushed into stardust, turning into an infinite energy mist. Impossible. I'm the first bloodline in the Sea of Stars. It's impossible for me to lose. If I fuse with my 2 bodies. 3 mists filled with source power were colliding and fusing. However, 2 of the mists were melting and assimilated at a visible speed. Under the collision of source power, the stars in the creation star compass trembled, and the power of the entire star domain seemed to be triggered by the battle between the 2. Han Fei could feel that Jiang Bai was very strong, but in terms of will, he was at a completely different level from him. He wanted to defeat him with the will of a dominator, but he clearly overestimated himself and underestimated his supreme will. Rumble. Dong. 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 In less than 100 seconds, Jiang Bai's dominator body was obliterated. At that moment, in the creation star compass, outside the creation star compass, in the endless sea of stars, the great Tao rumbled, and the blush that ignited in the heavens covered one galaxy after another. The blood-colored brilliance could be felt even in the sea realm. At that moment, whether it was the death god who presided over the sea realm, eldest senior brother who was fighting at the end of the Sea of Stars, or even the first battlefield that was blocked by the ominous, there were some astronomical changes. A dominator has died? There were only so many dominator-level powerhouses born in this vast sea of stars. Those who could enter this realm all had infinite luck and talent. However, at this moment, before the ominous attacked, a dominator had died. This matter was enough to shake the entire Sea of Stars. No one knew what happened, but at this moment, in this vast sea of stars, countless creatures were in awe. In the creation star compass, Han Fei's voice was calm. You've lived 4 billions of years. You have the #1 bloodline in the world, but you don't want to improve. You just want to steal the fruits of others. Before you get the ancient divine vine, you want to snatch my supreme body. With your temperament, even if you combine your 3 bodies, you are still a dominator. It's impossible for you to cross the unknown domain above the dominator realm. Therefore, you are still trash. Roar. I can't accept this. Rumble. With a cry filled with infinite resentment, the heavenly Tao cried blood, and the phenomena of sky morning appeared again, superimposing on each other. Han Fei only sighed slightly at Jiang Bai's death. This person was actually not weak, even unimaginably strong. How could he be weak to have the #1 bloodline in the Sea of Stars? Unfortunately, too many schemes made him lose. He wanted to break through the dominator realm, but he didn't have a heart worthy of it. If Jiang Bai hadn't been born in the eternal race, but in the myriad races, he might have been able to reach the supreme realm. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Han Fei's body finally completely condensed, and the mountain-like treasury of the divine descendants appeared under him. Obviously, in order to take a bet. This time, Chiu Wanren didn't hesitate to take out the entire treasury. Han Fei stood quietly on the treasure divine mountain, and energy kept pouring into his body under his feet, which seemed to be strengthening his body. And in Han Fei's palm, the demon purification pot appeared, and 9 small vines spread out wantonly. Come on! With Han Fei's shout, under the origin bloodline divine tree, billions of kilometers of land shattered, and an ancient array exploded. From the ancient array, a small vine rose to the sky and flew towards Han Fei. The 10th? Even Jing Guanming couldn't help narrowing his eyes. The 10th vine was only rumored to be found by Han Fei. Old Han was overjoyed. However, seeing that Han Fei had one, he couldn't hold on anymore. The power of his breakthrough to the Dominator realm was gradually dissipating. It wasn't that old Han couldn't make a breakthrough, but that the energy in the creation star compass was almost drained by Han Fei. This place couldn't support his breakthrough anymore. Seeing this, Han Fei raised his hand and the creation star compass spat out all the sea of stars here, turning into a disk again and appearing in Han Fei's palm. Old Han and the others were only one step away from becoming dominators. The destruction of the eternal race had become a fact. It was time for them to become dominators. Han Fei threw the treasure under his feet to old Han, who shouted, "How can you give the resources to me when you're about to advance?" However, Han Fei smiled casually. Now, whether there are resources or not won't affect my breakthrough. Besides, I can take infinite energy at will in the vast sea of stars. There are no rules in this sea of stars that can restrain me. This was the confidence of a supreme. At this moment, the 10th vine was returning and fusing with the demon purification pot. Han Fei glanced at his information because he found that his body was abnormal. He discovered that the source power was melting and dissipating in his bones and blood. What replaced it was a broader and boundless power. He felt that he could easily shake a star river. No, shaking a star river was just the power of a sea-quelling god. What Han Fei felt was that he seemed to be able to shake several star rivers. Information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Owner, Han Fei. Level, Supreme Dominator, upgrading. Bloodline ranking among the clans in the Infinite Ocean, 1. Source power, 29,020,000, upgrading and transforming. Star River source power, 3 pieces, upgrading. First spiritual heritage, origin spiritual heritage. Second spiritual heritage, eternal darkness spiritual heritage. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang sky swallowing fish, level 119. Second spiritual beast, Emperor Sparrow, level 119. Main art, God Fiend body. Seeing this information, Han Fei couldn't help being a little curious. He had no doubt about the improvement of his bloodline power. After Jiang Baiyu was swallowed by him, whether he swallowed his bloodline or not, his second bloodline in the Sea of Stars would become first. Even Jiang Bai's flesh, blood, soul, and even bloodline had been swallowed by him as infinite law energy, so at this time, his bloodline might even exceed the original Jiang Bai's. As for the Star River source power, was it the power of a dominator? The power of stars was the symbol of a monarch. The divine source was the symbol of a god. Source power was the symbol of a sea-quelling god. As for the Star River source power, it should be an upgraded version of source power. So far, Han Fei had tried it and felt that he could reach 3 star rivers away at furthest with a thought. As for the so-called Star River, it was not difficult to understand. In a star river, there might be 1 billion, 10 billion, or even 100 billion stars. These stars gathered because of some power, forming a complete star river. As for the star river source power, Han Fei guessed that it should be the power that gathered billions of stars. However, in the sea of stars, there were countless star rivers. It didn't seem to be a particularly powerful thing to cross 3 star rivers in an instant. Whether it was eldest senior brother, the death god, or even senior brother undead, for them, they could arrive in the distant sea of stars in the blink of an eye. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, could it be that I haven't completed my advancement, so I can't reach their level? Or could it be that he had just entered the Dominator realm, so he didn't know the specific abilities of this realm? However, when 5th senior brother advanced, his source power was 28 million. But he felt that he could fight a Dominator-level powerhouse. If 5th senior brother meant not to use secret techniques, it could be seen that the power of a Dominator shouldn't be too exaggerated. Otherwise, why did 5th senior brother feel that he could fight a Dominator? Now, his improvement could be said to be abnormally terrifying. In terms of source power alone, excluding the Star River source power, his improvement was more than 24 times. Was this number exaggerated? In fact, in Han Fei's opinion, it wasn't exaggerated at all. It was normal for ordinary great monarchs to increase their combat power by 10 times when they advance to become gods. And between gods and godslayers, in terms of the gap in combat power alone, there was at least twice as much. In this case, there was 20 times more room for growth from a peak-level great monarch to a godslayer. And there was a threshold between the god-slaying level and the sea-quelling god. The strongest sea-quelling god, like 5th senior brother, was nearly 5 times stronger than the strongest god-slayer. In this case, the difference between a great monarch and a sea-quelling god might be 100 times. Not to mention a dominator, the power of a dominator was immeasurable in the eyes of ordinary people. And his current improvement was clearly far from enough. Of course, he hadn't completely upgraded yet. He didn't know what the final result would be. Apart from the statistical questions, the supreme divine technique had already disappeared from his main arts. This meant that at this point, he had completely mastered the supreme divine technique. He might still slowly improve his strength in the future, but there would be no further. After checking his comprehensive combat power, Han Fei's target in the next moment was naturally the fruit on the 10th divine vine. Previously, his strength was too low, and he hadn't completely gathered the demon purification vines, so he couldn't see through the last fruit. At this moment, when Han Fei glanced over, he was stunned. Han Fei didn't look too good. Information popped up in front of him. Name: Fruit of Creation. Introduction: a unique fruit born in the ultimate form of the demon. Purification pot. Once used, it can't be regenerated. Level: None. Quality: Creation. Contained power of creation. Function 1: reopen the chaos and create another sea of stars. Function 2: after taking it, one will disintegrate himself and transform into the will rule of the chaotic sea of stars, obtaining power beyond the Dominator realm, but as time goes by, he will eventually assimilate into the world and lose himself. Function 3: if absorbing its power slowly, after 9 eras of reincarnation, there is a chance for its taker to surpass the Dominator realm. Remarks: only one of the 3 functions of the fruit of creation can be used. When Han Fei saw this fruit, he was extremely uneasy. The 3 functions of the fruit of creation were all very powerful, but each choice didn't seem to be the best choice. You gain some, you lose some. This completely confirmed the ability of the fruit of creation. For example, reopening the chaos and creating another sea of stars. It was hard to say if they could resist the ominous, but would the creatures of the myriad races in this sea of stars be taken away or left here to fend for themselves? However, this function made Han Fei wonder if it was because of a power similar to the fruit of creation that created this sea of stars at the beginning of the chaotic era. Did this mean that outside the sea of stars, there was a sea of stars and an unknown realm? Why was the current sea of stars born? These were all mysteries. The second function of the fruit of creation was to help its taker disintegrate himself, transform into the will rule of the chaotic sea of stars, and then lose himself. Wasn't this King suicide? Perhaps after obtaining this power, he could experience a power that exceeded the Dominator realm. However, it wasn't easy for him to get to where he was today. He had wives, children, parents, friends, and pursuits. He didn't want to sacrifice himself before he could experience all the beauty of life. No one would be willing to do that. At least, Han Fei didn't have the righteousness to sacrifice himself to save the myriad races in the sea of stars. Did he know the myriad races? He didn't even know how many races the myriad races had. He had only fought for the human race in his life. It was already extremely difficult in life. Threatening. Now, could he still fight for the so-called myriad races? Perhaps others could, such as eldest senior brother, the death god, the master of time, and the others. Although they didn't seem easy to get along with on the surface, they had such intentions. Unfortunately, Han Fei didn't, so he would never take this fruit of creation. Even if this sea of stars was really destroyed, with this fruit of creation, he could take away those who were important to him. As for the third function, slowly absorbing the fruit of creation, this should be the best choice. Unfortunately, absorbing this thing required 9 great eras. From the prophet, he learned that one great era was billions of years. When he finally absorbed the fruit of creation, the sea of stars might have been destroyed 800 times. Besides, even if the sea of stars persevered until that time, absorbing the fruit of creation didn't mean that it could definitely surpass the Dominator realm. He just had a chance to surpass the Dominator realm. Therefore, on the surface, these 3 functions seemed to be meaningless to the current Han Fei. And he could basically give up the idea of destroying the ominous through the 10th vine of the demon purification pot. Fortunately, this battle was not without gains. One was that he had successfully walked the Supreme Tao. The other was that Jing Guangming had appeared. This person was the former guardian of the Creation Divine Prison. No one knew why he was suppressed on the 4th level of the Creation Divine Prison. At least, Han Fei had never thought that such a master was still alive. He only thought that it was just a powerful Dominator-level powerhouse on the 4th level. Another benefit of this battle was naturally old Han and his mother. Now they should be able to put their hatred down. They were already extremely powerful. To be able to fight a Dominator. What they lacked might be an opportunity. And this opportunity had arrived. It was only a matter of time before they broke through to the Dominator realm. Besides, old Han and his mother had both said that if the eternal race was destroyed, they would definitely become Dominators. In this case, in the short term, there would be 4 more Dominators in the Sea of Stars. This should be able to slow down the pressure on the first battlefield and the path of no return. After learning about his combat power and the fruit of creation, Han Fei looked at Jing Guangming and said casually, "Senior, are you finally willing to come out?" Jing Guangming's eyes were calm and his expression was indifferent. "The rules of the creation divine prison are ineffective against me. Whether you kill the Dominator or not, I can come out at any time." Han Fei cursed in his heart. "You can always come out? Then why were you pretending? The Sea of Stars is almost gone. But you had been hiding in the creation divine prison and pretending to be dead? May I ask why?" Jing Guangming glanced at the battlefield and said indifferently, "Finish your battle first." Logically speaking, Jing Guangming must be a righteous person responsible for capturing those who had committed heinous crimes. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have been able to become the guardian of the divine prison. Since he was such a person, why was he so cold when he came to him earlier? Even if he had something difficult to say, he should give him a response. Right? However, Han Fei didn't have the time or mood to talk to Jing Guangming about this. Indeed, the battle of the eternal race hadn't ended yet. Now, there were only 3 dominators left, respectively held off by the 10 Yama kings, the first palace master of the Time Temple, and Jing Guangming. However, Jing Guangming didn't care about that dominator anymore. Obviously, he was going to hand him over to Han Fei. Han Fei knew what Jing Guangming meant, but this was indeed his battle. Although Jing Guangming ignored him before, he still took action in the end. However, Han Fei didn't want to owe him too much. At this moment, although he hadn't completely advanced, he could test his strength. At least, he had to figure out the true combat power of a dominator. Previously, he had really planned every single step to kill the heavenly soul dominator step by step. With the help of the death god and the law enforcement divine chain, he finally trapped the heavenly soul dominator step by step. If they fought head-on, Han Fei wouldn't even be able to withstand a slap before he made a breakthrough. At this moment, seeing that Jing Guangming had given up the battle here and Han Fei had removed the creation star compass, the first reaction of the dominator who was held off by Jing Guangming was to run first. Even Jiang Bai, who had hidden himself so well, had died. At this moment, Han Fei had made a breakthrough. And there was also Jing Guangming. The heavenly eternal race would have no chance to win. Swish! 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 However, when he wanted to escape, he found that the Sea of Stars seemed to reject him. He wanted to jump directly, but he failed. Swish! Before this person escaped halfway through the Star River, a knife light slashed at him. He pointed at it casually, and the knife light was shattered. Huh? A feint? This person's heart skipped a beat, because the power of this knife light was too weak. He had to guess the other party was brewing some power. Han Fei, on the other hand, was a little excited. Now he could cover 3 star rivers in an instant. However, he discovered that the dominator he stopped could easily shatter his knife light. He seemed to be very strong. Huh? Han Fei seemed to feel that something was wrong. In order to confirm his thoughts, he attacked again, instinctively trying to mobilize the power in the black hole. In the next moment, Han Fei's face changed slightly. Although the power he unleashed was very strong, it wasn't right. Previously, when he was a peak-level great monarch, his combat power could reach 12 million. At this moment, although the power spewing out of the black hole was very strong, it was still source power, and it only had the combat power of 30 million points of source power. If the power he could exert was only source power, what was the Star River? Source power? Was it to extract power from the Star River in time? Bang! Han Fei was casually slapped hundreds of millions of kilometers away. So weak? The god of the eternal race seemed to be very surprised. He had thought that it was just Han Fei's feint just now, so he was fully focused and abnormally vigilant. But he didn't expect the power that Han Fei erupted with to still be so weak. Of course, he didn't believe that Han Fei was so weak. Otherwise, it was impossible for Han Fei to kill a Dominator-level powerhouse. He hasn't comprehended the fighting style of a Dominator yet. This person immediately knew the reason. Han Fei had only entered the Dominator realm for a short time. And the fighting style of the Dominator realm had indeed changed a lot from when one was at the sea-quelling god level. If he didn't figure out the knack, he might find that he didn't even know how to fight. Han Fei frowned. He couldn't be so weak. He had already embarked on the supreme path. Even if he hadn't completely advanced, his combat power shouldn't be so weak. But he couldn't even withstand a casual slap from the other party. This didn't make sense. No. Han Fei suddenly realized that the other party's slap didn't injure him at all, nor did it make him feel irresistible. It felt as if he had been casually pushed and it didn't cause any substantial damage at all. This also meant that whether it was his physique or strength, he was not weaker than the other party at all. However, he was sent flying by the other party. It could only be that he didn't know how to fight. He had been fighting all his life, but he didn't know how to fight when he reached the Dominator realm. Wasn't that ridiculous? As for the Dominator of the eternal race, he clearly didn't attack Han Fei when the latter didn't know how to fight. In the next moment, Han Fei felt that a certain power was trying to open an abnormal spatial channel. He immediately wanted to mobilize the power of the heavens and earth to activate the power of the vast star rivers. However, the battlefield was ever changing. This kind of mobilization was too slow. By the time his strength rushed over, the other party would have already run away. Having no choice, Han Fei could only continue to use the source power in the black hole to punch the void. This punch triggered the entire galaxy. It seemed to be infinitely powerful, but the Dominator opposite him only slapped the air to block his power, but he had almost disappeared in front of Han Fei's eyes. Han Fei had a feeling that this person would really run away in the next moment. At this moment, a sword pierced through the void, and the escaping void channel was pierced by a sword light and exploded. In the next moment, the primordial 8 fierce swords appeared at some point in time and sealed the space where Han Fei and the Dominator were. In the next moment, Jing Guanming said indifferently, "If a Dominator borrows power, then the Dominator is not much stronger than the sea-quelling god. You paid such a huge price to comprehend the supreme ultimacy, but you abandoned it in battle. Then why did you comprehend it?" Reminded by Jing Guanming, Han Fei seemed to realize something. The Dominator of the eternal race didn't seem to need to mobilize the Star River source power to fight at all. Then where did his strength come from? In other words, the other party didn't absorb strength from the Star Rivers immediately. And when the creation star compass swallowed the eternal race, no one could connect to their origin stars, so it was impossible for the Dominator to borrow strength from his origin star. Then, power could only come from the body itself. However, he could only exert the source power in the black hole. This was clearly not the power of a dominator, but the power of a sea-quelling god. Supreme ultimacy? Will? Han Fei tried it. When the supreme heart was ignited, Han Fei felt his body tremble, and a terrifying power seemed to instantly ignite the black hole, where the two spiritual heritages converged. At that moment, Han Fei felt that his body seemed to carry the power of billions of stars. It was a kind of power domination. He felt that he seemed to be able to destroy a huge star river in an instant. So, this is the true power of a dominator? The profound meaning of the supreme lay in the supreme heart. This was a power of will. This power gave source power greater effect and destructive power. Besides, Han Fei couldn't help but feel that the source power in the black hole was ignited by the supreme will. His body seemed to contain infinite power. Han Fei casually punched out, and the starry sky collapsed. A dazzling divine light instantly fell on the eternal race's dominator. Bang! This time, the dominator of the eternal race was sent flying thousands of kilometers away. With a bang, he hit the sword domain of the primordial eight. Fierce swords, and half of his chi and blood were dispersed by Han Fei's punch. Han Fei clearly felt that the other party had slowed down. At the same time, he had a feeling that he could make the fist light he blasted out appear anywhere in the 3 star rivers in an instant. Is this the star river source power? Han Fei seemed to understand something. In the dominator realm, the number of star rivers he could control represented his immediate combat range. Within the range of the 3 star rivers, he was almost omnipotent and could dominate everything. Dominating everything, this was the origin of the dominator realm. However, since he could dominate these star rivers, so could the dominator of the eternal race. However, the other party couldn't escape with a thought. Instead, he was intercepted by him who hadn't grasped the use of power just now. Obviously, when 2 dominators could both dominate a star river, the competition of dominator power would make them lose the authority of dominator. Both parties could interrupt the other party's behavior of dominating the star river. Therefore, the competition of dominators ended up as a battle. And once it became a battle, it would become a competition of the Tao wills. They had comprehended. He could stop the dominator of the eternal race, because the supreme will completely crushed his dominator will, causing the other party's power to dominate star rivers almost completely disappear. In the end, he could only fight him head-on. In order to confirm his guess, Han Fei issued an order in his heart, and the sword domain covered by the primordial 8 fierce swords was shattered by him. In the next moment, Han Fei smiled. Yes, although he was now a dominator, he was a supreme dominator and had a unique supreme heart. Within his dominator range, no one, including Jing Guangming, could compete with him in terms of dominator will. This was a natural advantage. It meant that once one fell into his dominated range, no other will could surpass his will to dominate the star rivers. Jing Guangming didn't react to Han Fei's actions. Instead, he sighed in his heart. He hadn't seen a supreme will for a long time. At this moment, the strong master of the eternal race cursed Jing Guangming more than 10,000 times in his heart. Aren't you King aloof? Then why did you meddle in this? If you have the ability, let Han Fei comprehend it himself. Now, Han Fei had clearly discovered how to use the power of a dominator. Furthermore, the power of that punch was comparable to his. However, how could anyone have the source power of 3 pieces of star rivers? as soon as he became a dominator? A sea-quelling god could suppress a sea and mobilize the power of the star river, but it wasn't fast enough, complete, or pure enough. When one became a dominator, he could completely dominate the star river. Therefore, under normal circumstances, one had to start from grasping the source power of one star river when he became a dominator. He had cultivated for 30 million years, but he could only carry the source power of 3 pieces of star rivers. But Han Fei, who had just stepped into this realm, was already comparable to him who had cultivated 30 million years. Who would feel comfortable about this? Clang! As soon as the punch was extinguished, another broadsword slashed down. The dominator's fist soared to the sky, and 16 diamond bracelets on his wrists turned into billions of divine bracelets that blasted at Han Fei. However, the broadsword beams didn't stop, and the countless divine bracelet phantoms were all shattered. That's impossible. Just now, you only had the source power of 3 pieces of star rivers. How can you have 4 now? The dominator of the eternal race was also stunned. This was too unbelievable. Even if Han Fei had walked the path of a supreme, it didn't make sense for him to be so abnormally strong, right? Han Fei, on the other hand, was not surprised at all. He was still leveling up. In the first place, wasn't it normal for his strength to increase? Puff. The eternal race dominator's body was almost cut in half by Han Fei, and half of his flesh and blood melted under this knife. Huh? So weak? Just now, Han Fei felt that he was very weak. But now, he felt that the dominator of the eternal race was very weak. Or rather, it shouldn't be said that the dominator of the eternal race was weak, but that the star river source power he had was too strong. In addition, the supreme will was driving the star river source power, so he should be one level higher than this person. Therefore, this slash almost cut this dominator in half. Seeing this, Han Fei wanted to activate his original Great Tao and completely kill this dominator. But then his heart trembled. He had activated his original Great Tao, but his strength surprisingly didn't increase. Not to mention 10 times his combat power, it didn't even double. Could it be that my original Great Tao can no longer provide for my strength to soar? However, Han Fei wasn't too surprised. Indeed, even without the enhancement of 10 times his combat power, this person was still no match for him. If he really had 10 times his combat power and the source power of 40 pieces of star rivers at once, he would be much stronger than this dominator. A dominator was a dominator after all. This person might not be a match for him, but he was definitely not weak. If he was really weak, it was impossible for him and the heavenly soul dominator to block the death god with the creation mystic yellow tower and the primordial 8 fierce swords. Therefore, the improvement of the star river source power couldn't be that simple. However, Han Fei didn't give up. In addition to his original Great Tao, he still had the path of invincibility. The third eye between Han Fei's eyebrows opened, and in an instant, it was shining, and his strength doubled. Not bad. Han Fei was secretly relieved. His original Great Tao might have reached its limit. He could rely on this dozens of times strengthening before probably because he was too weak in the past. Now, his original Great Tao's potential for improvement might have been used up by him. However, the path of invincibility had nothing to do with his original Great Tao, so it could still improve him. Besides, when the path of invincibility was activated, Han Fei felt that the Infinite energy accumulated in his body was quickly absorbed and assimilated by his body. Seeing that Han Fei's momentum soared again, the Dominator knew that he couldn't give Han Fei any more time, or he would have no chance of escaping. He pierced through the endless void with the power of the Star River, trying to cross it by force. When he had the source power of 4 pieces of Star Rivers, this Dominator was already no match for him. Now that Han Fei had the source power of 8 pieces of Star Rivers, this person was naturally no match for him. The power of the supreme technique and the path of invincibility was completely revealed at this moment. As soon as the Dominator rushed into the endless void, he saw endless void cracks turn into a broadsword beam that slashed in the opposite direction. Pfft! This power directly crushed the flesh and blood of the eternal races. Dominator, leaving only his Dao bones. In fact, Han Fei didn't know what kind of bone it was exactly, but the other party's bones were clearly weaker than his, so it couldn't be called a supreme bone. However, this kind of bone was stronger than Dao bones, so it wasn't a Dao bone. But Han Fei didn't think too much about it. He had just entered the Dominator realm and didn't have much experience after all. At the moment when the other party's flesh and blood were dispersed, Han Fei cut off the river of life and suppressed this person with the supreme will, forcibly stripping his vitality. The latter struggled hard, but it was in vain. Han Fei had already risen. His combat power was stronger than his Dao bones were stronger than his bloodline was stronger than his, and his control of laws was stronger than his. In the current sea of stars, Han Fei's speed was even faster than his. Therefore, when this person felt a great loss of vitality, he could do nothing about it. He was unwilling. Why was it that after cultivating hard for thousands of years, he was still no match for a newbie Dominator? He was unwilling. He clearly had an endless lifespan, but his river of life had been severed and his vitality had been forcibly stripped, but he couldn't do anything about it. Swish, swish. Under the effect of the time-splitting technique, 2 more Han Fei appeared at the same time. The 3 of them worked together and the law of life completely enveloped this Dominator. In just 30 seconds, the river of life of this person was almost drained. Roar. Han Fei, my life, I dominate. Explode. Han Fei could suppress the Dominator, but if the other party really wanted to blow himself up, Han Fei couldn't stop him. Rumble. This person was really ruthless. Knowing that he couldn't survive, he still wanted to drag Han Fei down with him. However, the boundless energy caused by the self-detonation was crazily absorbed by the 3 Han Feis into their bodies. He was in the middle of a breakthrough and needed a lot of energy. The self-destruction of a Dominator should be extremely powerful, but the infinite power was also Han Fei's best nutrition. In the next moment, the sound of death knell spread throughout the sea of stars. Han Fei's body was shining with golden light. Before he could do anything, the Dominator of the eternal race, who was suppressed by the 10 Yama kings, roared. Han Fei, I admit defeat. However, although the eternal race has been defeated, I'm at least a Dominator. If I'm on the ominous battlefield, I can still help a lot. However, Han Fei said solemnly, you? I was afraid that you would surrender to the enemy, so you'd better die. No. I can swear and establish a contract. As long as you can believe me, I can do anything. This Dominator panicked. Han Fei, who had mastered the supreme technique, was unimaginably terrifying. In a one-on-one battle, he could kill a Dominator in a moment. This combat power was probably at the level of the masters of the Three Temples. If he were in the Soul Sea at this moment, he might be able to fight him with the infinite soul power of the Soul Sea. But this was the King Sea of Stars. Even if he could escape from Han Fei, there were still Jing Guanming and Han Guanchu, who was making a breakthrough. It was impossible for him to escape under these people's noses, so surrender was his only choice. I don't accept it. A moment later, in the 10 Directions Purgatory, Han Fei was holding a rotten divine bone in his hand. The divine bone was dissipating bit by bit, turning into infinite energy and laws, which were swallowed by Han Fei. He needed all the energy and the power of laws now. These would become resources on his way to advancement. This was the dominance of the supreme technique. Swallowing these strong masters was like swallowing refined stars for him now. After another moment, Han Fei held the blade of hope in one hand and dragged out a Dominator-level corpse from the Time River with the other. Seeing this, the sea-quelling gods and god-slaying level powerhouses of the eternal race, who had long stopped fighting, all gave up. Yes, they had already stopped fighting and didn't dare to fight anymore. At this point of this battle, the Dominators on their side had all died, and a new legend had been born. In front of this legend, they had no room to resist. However, they clearly still had a trace of hope. They hoped that Han Fei could send them to the ominous battlefield. However, Han Fei just glanced at these people calmly. You have made too many mistakes to achieve your current achievements. Some mistakes can be forgiven and punished, but some can only be made up with your lives. Giving you a chance to enter the path of reincarnation is already the greatest mercy. Buzz. As Han Fei waved his hand, infinite knife lights were born in the void. Each of them carried the will of a Dominator and was not something the sea-quelling gods and the God-slayers could resist. When the strong masters all turned into stardust, Han Fei felt a little emotional. The Dominator realm was too powerful. In this sea of stars, only Dominators could keep a Dominator in check. When Han Fei had seen the power of senior brother Azure Dragon could shake a Star River, he had thought that when the number of sea-quelling gods reached a certain level, they might be able to kill a Dominator. But now, he didn't think so. Even the weakest Dominator wasn't someone sea-quelling gods could kill. Of course, except for the Dominator-level ominous. Old Han and his mother were strong enough, weren't they? They could increase their strength to the Dominator level, which could indeed temporarily restrain Dominator-level powerhouses. However, the sea-quelling god was still the sea-quelling god. Even if they temporarily obtained the power of Dominator through secret techniques and supreme nature treasures, it was essentially borrowed. Unlike real Dominators, they had such power in the first place, and it was endless. He seemed to understand now why Santian and the others were not afraid of embarking on the path of no return. It was because they had reached the upper limit of the Sea of Stars, and the path of no return was the higher level they pursued. As for life, it was actually very clear to Dominator-level powerhouses. At this level, most Dominators didn't care about life and death. Of course, there might be some exceptions for the Dominators of the eternal race. This was because their strength came too easily. They had experienced too little on the way to becoming Dominators, so they cherished their lives and even begged for mercy. Compared to others, Jiang Baiyu was an extremely special figure in the eternal race. He was not afraid of death, so he dared to try to snatch Han Fei's supreme body without knowing the supreme ultimacy. Because for him, once he succeeded, he would reach a realm that had never been reached in the history of the Sea of Stars. This temptation was too great. Even greater than life. Therefore, before Jiang Bai died, he was only unwilling. Perhaps in his eyes, he was only one step away from becoming a dominator and couldn't feel the power above the dominator realm, so he was unwilling. At this moment, the battle was over. Most of the strong masters here were relieved. The first palace master of the Time Temple bowed to Han Fei. Congratulations on becoming a dominator, human emperor. Please inform me when you go to the first battlefield in the future. With that, the first palace master of the Time Temple left with the 3 quelling gods of the Time Temple. As for Shiman Linglan, she naturally had to stay. She and Han Fei were already husband and wife. If there was nothing else, she wouldn't go to the Time Temple again. The 10 Yama kings also bowed to Han Fei. Among them, the Yama king, who took out the 5-colored primordial chaos banner, said, "Congratulations on stepping into the dominator realm, human emperor. I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can agree." Han Fei nodded slightly. Yes. He said, "The 10 Directions Purgatory has suffered a certain amount of damage, so we need a supreme nature treasure to temporarily suppress it. When the 10 Directions Purgatory recovers, we'll return it to you." Oh? Creation Primordial Tower? No, it's the 6-foot God Seal. Following his gaze, Han Fei saw the 2 supreme nature treasures used by the dominator who was besieged by the 10 Yama kings. He had 2 supreme nature treasures. One was the million god blood bead, and the other was a small seal. Han Fei didn't recognize it. It turned out to be called the 6-foot God Seal. Han Fei nodded. Okay. Thank you, human emperor. With that, the 10 Yama kings returned with the small seal. Little junior brother, senior brother Azure Dragon and the old dragon god stepped forward, and senior brother Azure Dragon said, "Little junior brother, the million god blood bead is refined from the dragon ball of the ancient dragon god. It's an acquired supreme nature treasure. This bead may help me break through to the dominator realm. I'm afraid I'll have to borrow it from you for a while, but I might not be able to return it to you." Han Fei smiled. "Senior brother, what are you talking about? It belongs to the dragon race in the first place, not me. If I can help you step into the dominator realm, I'm more than willing to do it." Senior brother Azure Dragon shook his head slightly. "It's not easy. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it before you go to the first battlefield. I can only give it a try. When will you leave?" Han Fei looked at his information and shook his head slightly. "I've just made a breakthrough and may need some time to consolidate my foundation. But it depends on the situation on the first battlefield. Once senior sister Shenlu informs me, I'll have to go regardless of whether I've completely consolidated my foundation or not." Senior brother Azure Dragon nodded. "Okay, remember to call me when the time comes. Time waits for no man. I have to go first." "Wait a minute." "Huh?" Han Fei looked at the old dragon god and said, "Senior dragon god has a lot of injuries in his body." "Wait a moment." The old dragon god grinned. "Can they be cured?" Han Fei smiled. "Yes." With a thought from Han Fei, the power of the star rivers was triggered, and Infinite divine brilliance fused into the body of the old dragon god. Senior brother Azure Dragon also put on a rare smile. Although time was tight, they still had time to heal wounds. The demon god glanced at him. There was no point in staying here. He said. Han Fei, I'll go back to the sea realm and study the follow-up of the Godfiend body with old Qiu. Han Fei smiled and said, okay, I have questions about this technique too. The limit of the soul-body fusion techniques is the sea-quelling god. But this technique is a monarch-level divine quality technique. It doesn't seem right. I suspect that there is some extended profound meaning to the soul-body fusion. If I can deduce the subsequent techniques, this technique is very likely to reach the dominator level. The demon god's eyelids twitched. I think so too. However, go about your business. The matters on the first battlefield are more important. After a short conversation, the demon god left. Old Han was making a breakthrough, and his mother was guarding him. Han Fei extended his hand, and Shimin Linglan came to Han Fei with a faint smile. She held his hand and said, I knew you would succeed. Han Fei said, of course I have to succeed. Otherwise, how could I bear to leave you alone? Shimin Linglan muttered, it's not like you haven't done it before. Cough, cough. Han Fei awkwardly looked away, but in fact, he knew very well that Shimin Linglan's personality was too strong. If anything happened to him, she would definitely follow him to die. It seemed that everything was still the same as they were in the Grand Myriad Mountains. They would never abandon each other. At this moment, Han Fei looked at Jing Guangming and said, there's no one else now. Can you tell me, senior? For example, why did you seal yourself in the creation divine prison? However, Jing Guangming didn't answer Han Fei's question directly. Instead, he said, I didn't expect to see the 10 vines of the demon purification pot appear again in this life. Release the demon purification pot and you'll know. Huh? Han Fei found it a little strange. Did Jing Guangming have anything to do with the demon purification pot? However, Han Fei wasn't afraid of what Jing Guangming would do. Although he hadn't completely stabilized his foundation, if Jing Guangming had any ill intentions, he wouldn't be afraid. Besides, if he really had ill intentions, he would have long attacked him. Therefore, Han Fei didn't hesitate. The demon purification pot appeared in his palm. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, the 10 vines of the demon purification pot attacked at the same time and instantly pierced through Jing Guangming. Han Fei's face changed. Why did the demon purification pot take the initiative to attack? And the target was actually Jing Guangming. More importantly, Jing Guangming didn't resist at all. For a moment, senior brother Azure Dragon, his mother, and the others looked over. In the next moment, a tremendous amount of ominous aura spewed out of Jing Guangming's body. Behind Jing Guangming, a twisted figure intertwined with darkness appeared. The darkness seemed to be roaring, but no sound came out. The ominous? Han Fei couldn't help being shocked. The ominous was suppressed in Jing Guangming's body. In this way, it actually explained a lot of things, such as why Jing Guangming disappeared and sealed himself. The blade of hope had already appeared in Shimin Linglan's hand. As for Han Fei, he was relatively calm, because Jing Guangming still looked calm, and he didn't seem to be in pain at all, let alone have any intention of resisting. Han Fei couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "What level of ominous?" Jing Guangming said, "Ominous level, ominous." Buzz. Instantly, Han Fei's pupils were constricted. He looked at Jing Guangming in shock. "The ominous original body?" Jing Guangming nodded slightly. Hiss. Han Fei couldn't help taking a breath. "If the ominous original body is suppressed by you, is the one that is causing trouble in the sea realm fake?" Jing Guangming said indifferently, "No one has ever said that there is only one ominous, right?" Jing Guangming continued, "The world doesn't know that in the primordial era, there was actually already a second ominous that exceeded the dominator level." Han Fei asked, "So, in the primordial era, you were actually fighting two ominous?" Jing Guangming nodded slightly. "Li Daoi, you probably don't know him. He solved one of them alone, but he didn't completely solve it. There are still some remnants left, which are suppressed by me. As for the other ominous, that's the matter of the other strong masters of the myriad races. He solved an ominous that exceeded the dominator level alone?" Han Fei couldn't help being surprised. Even eldest senior brother didn't seem to be able to do this, but Li Daoi could do this. How strong was he at his peak? Han Fei asked, "So you sealed yourself in the creation divine prison for billions of years just to obliterate him?" Seeing Jing Guangming nod slightly, Han Fei felt a trace of admiration in his heart. This guy was also a ruthless person. He made a different choice from Jiang Taichu. Jiang Taichu chose to devour the ominous, while this person chose to suppress it for billions of years. Jing Guangming said indifferently, "It's not obliteration, but I'm indeed waiting for an opportunity. Now, 10 vines have appeared." The demon purification pot was crazily swallowing the ominous aura, and even Jing Guangming's flesh and bones were decaying. Han Fei could feel that Jing Guangming's river of life was trembling violently and seemed to be about to break free at any time. He realized that Jing Guangming was asking for death. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Hold on. Since you said that this is just the remnant of the ominous, why did you die with him?" However, Jing Guangming shook his head slightly. "I've already become one with him. Once I leave the creation divine prison, if I don't die, I will eventually fall into the darkness and become the next ominous. Death is the greatest kindness and the best relief for me." Jing Guangming's tone was extremely calm. Han Fei didn't expect that asking him to help would kill him. This kind of person who risked his life to fight the ominous had his own righteousness. Han Fei didn't think he could do it, nor did he dare to agree. But it didn't mean that Jing Guangming wasn't worthy of admiration. A person who endured billions of years of loneliness and still upheld justice in his heart was worthy of admiration. The demon purification pot in its complete state finally showed its dominance. In just a moment, more than half of the dominator had melted. At this moment, even the dominator bone was fading. As for the dark shadow, it seemed to be struggling desperately, but in the end, under the baptism of the demon purification pot, it calmed down and finally dissipated. Jing Guangming suddenly asked, "Is there wine?" "Yes, there is." Han Fei took out 5th senior brother's precious wine and handed it over. He couldn't stop Jing Guangming from dying. Even if he did, he might not know how to deal with it. Jing Guangming's almost illusory dominator bone took the wine calabash, pulled out the stopper, and poured it to the ground horizontally in front of him, as if paying tribute to someone. "In my previous life, as the guardian of the divine prison, I never drank What a waste of this pot of good wine. Jing Guangming's words made Han Fei a little sad. He didn't know what this person had experienced in his life. Han Fei asked, "Senior, do you have any last wishes?" Jing Guangming shook his head slightly and looked into the distance of the sea of stars, muttering, "I once controlled the light and was once trapped in darkness. I've seen the good and the evil in the world. Li Daoi, I've returned the favor I owe you." In the next moment, Jing Guangming's body and the dark shadow completely faded, and the demon purification pot ate them without leaving any stardust. Here, only the death knells of the heavens were still ringing. The desolate, sad song seemed to be telling the end of a period of history. 13 years had passed since the battle of the eternal race. Old Han and his mother broke through to the Dominator realm one after another, and cultivated in seclusion in the sea realm. After the battle, Han Fei became busy. His first reaction was to enter his origin star and upgrade the time chain. However, after he entered his origin star, he discovered that it was impossible for him to cultivate on his origin star again. This was because with his current strength, it was useless to rely on an origin star. As long as he needed it, he could easily digest the power of a star in the blink of an eye. Therefore, although the time chain could continue to upgrade, he could only waste time here at most. And his origin star had finally become something like a backyard to him. Besides, when the time chain was upgraded to 2048, it could no longer be upgraded. This was because the 10th vine of the demon purification pot didn't seem to have the effect of upgrading the time chain. All its strength might be on the fruit of creation. Just like Han Fei, Little Black and Little White couldn't stay in Han Fei's origin star for long. As Han Fei's spiritual beast, Han Fei's breakthrough gave Little Black and Little White huge room for growth. They had been at the peak of the great monarch realm for too long and could make a breakthrough long ago, but it was meaningless to devour another 100,000 or million refined stars. Therefore, Han Fei found a star river that had been swept by war for Little Black and Little White. Everything withered and the energy was mixed here, but it was not a bad place to cultivate. In the past, they all swallowed origin stars, but this time, what Han Fei asked them to swallow was a star river. For the current Han Fei, a star river could be known with a thought, but for Little Black and Little White, who were only at the peak of the great monarch realm, there were billions of stars in a star river. When they could completely eat this star river, even if they hadn't advanced to the Dominator realm, it would probably be enough. Unable to cultivate in his origin star, Han Fei hadn't recovered from the state of advancement yet. He could only leave his origin star and do some research in this vast sea of stars, such as exploring the use of the power of Dominators, combat methods suitable for Dominators, and how to quickly travel through the sea of stars. Speaking of walking quickly in the sea of stars, Han Fei consulted Senior Sister Shenlu, but Senior Sister Shenlu asked him to study the birth of the star river source power. Therefore, Han Fei took Shiman Linglan to repeatedly pass through a star river. This was because Han Fei could perceive that in a star river, there were nearly 10 million black holes. Some star rivers even had more. Soon, he understood the reason for the birth of the star river. It was because of the countless stars attracted by tens of millions of black holes. These stars gathered together and became a star river. However, this was the star river on the surface. In fact, the power of these tens of millions of black holes was intertwined, forming a power that could cross a territory. This power was invisible, like the darkness hidden under the light. Only when one reached the sea-quelling god realm could he sense their existence. Only when one reached the dominator realm could he completely control this power. This was the Star River source power. When he learned about the birth of the Star River origin, Han Fei also learned something. In this Star River, almost every day, new stars were born. Some stars were just new stars, and the surging energy hadn't settled and was inactive. And some stars would suddenly give birth to vitality for some inexplicable reason. And this was the initial form of the origin sea. The source of this vitality was behind the countless black holes. When Han Fei stepped into these black holes, he seemed to be able to feel billions of star rivers at once. This was a strange space almost completely made of the source power of the star rivers, a space that was almost unbearable for anyone below the sea-quelling god realm. Here, Han Fei sensed that the sea of stars had boundaries. Here, whether it was the law of time or the law of space, they were very vague. When Han Fei tried to cross this source power space with a thought of the Star River source power in his body resonated with the source power. Here, in the resonance, Han Fei felt that he could go to all the places he wanted in an extremely short period of time. When Han Fei took Shimin Linglan to the border of the Sea of Stars, the two of them could clearly see that the border of the Sea of Stars was a gray mist. Shimin Linglan asked, "What's over there in the mist?" Of course, Shimin Linglan didn't expect Han Fei to answer. She was just curious. Han Fei tried to touch the mist with the power of a dominator, but he seemed to have encountered some insurmountable barrier and couldn't penetrate it at all. Han Fei asked, "Do you think this vast sea of stars looks like a cage?" Shimin Linglan smiled and said, "Then this cage is too big." According to this logic, there might be countless cages outside the cage. Then what are those spaces that carry the cages? Han Fei laughed. Who knows? Forget it. If we can walk into this mist, there's no need for the dominators to embark on the path of no return. Obviously, compared to this mist, the path of no return is a better choice. Han Fei and Shimin Linglan wandered in the Sea of Stars, crossing star rivers one after another, seeing trillions of races, and discovering countless origin grounds, but they didn't disturb these origin grounds. The two of them seemed to be exploring and studying the Sea of Stars out of curiosity. In the past dozen years, Han Fei had absorbed a lot of energy in the Sea of Stars and even found 3 places where chaotic mist gathered. Besides, Han Fei also found a large amount of chaotic original water in the Sea of Stars with the vast ocean navigator. The infinity water had long stopped at the level of a chaotic spiritual treasure. Because there was no chaotic original water, it couldn't be improved. It wasn't until now that Han Fei had the capital to travel the Sea of Stars and a treasure like the vast ocean navigator that he collected a large amount of chaotic original water. In just 13 years, Han Fei had upgraded the infinity water to the level of an ultra-quality nature spiritual treasure. Unfortunately, the infinity water didn't need to be refined at all. It only needed a large amount of infinity water to gather, absorb, and assimilate. However, this assimilation wasn't enough for it to become a supreme nature treasure. Therefore, Han Fei threw the infinity water into a chaotic mist, let it precipitate, and accepted the nourishment of the heavens and earth. Perhaps one day, it could become a supreme nature treasure, but it was hard to say if he would take it himself. At this moment, Han Fei and Shimin Linglan walked out of a huge super black hole. They were about to go to the next Star River, when Han Fei suddenly stopped. Shiman Linglan, what's wrong? Han Fei smiled. The Supreme Bone has completely taken shape. My advancement is over. Han Fei couldn't help but look at his information, which appeared. Owner, Han Fei. Level, Supreme Dominator. Bloodline ranking among the clans in the Infinite Ocean, number 1. Star River source power, 9 pieces. First spiritual heritage, origin spiritual heritage. Second spiritual heritage, eternal darkness spiritual heritage. First spiritual beast, twin Yin-Yang sky swallowing fish, level 119. Second spiritual beast, Emperor Sparrow, level 119. Main art, God-fiend body. Han Fei's first focus was naturally the Star River origin. He had the death god and senior sister Shenlu to consult, so he already knew how powerful the Star River source power was. A normal dominator, which was the kind of dominator who upgraded step by step, usually only had one piece of Star River source power when he first advanced. After consolidating his cultivation, it was a growth outbreak period. In about 1 million to 10 million years, half of the new dominators could reach 2 pieces of Star River source power. Only very few people could have 3 pieces of Star River source power in one go. And those who had 4 pieces of Star Rivers were definitely supreme powerhouses of their era. As for how much Star River source power a dominator would have, it was hard to say, but in the end, it was in the single digits. Unfortunately, when Han Fei was parasitizing Xantian, he was only treated as an independent soul by Xantian and stayed in his sea of consciousness, so he didn't know how many Star Rivers Xantian controlled when he upgraded to a dominator. However, based on Xantian's combat ability, Han Fei guessed that after Xantian stabilized his strength, this number was probably about 8 or 9. Han Fei had consolidated his cultivation in only 13 years and even mastered 9 pieces of Star Rivers. This was completely because the Supreme Will was too powerful. He could no longer be considered a normal dominator. This strength even exceeded that of old monsters who had cultivated for billions of years. Furthermore, one couldn't always become stronger after entering the dominator realm. The improvement of the Star River source power was related to their will and path. It was very likely that some dominators would never be able to reach 9 pieces of Star River source power. However, dominators had endless lifespans. Han Fei thought that although he was known as a supreme, he might not be the strongest. At least, from the looks of it, the strength of eldest senior brother, the death god, the master of time, and so on was all immeasurable. Although Han Fei was a little excited, he didn't become complacent. He believed that eldest senior brother and the others had been strong masters for hundreds of millions of years and were all strong masters on a certain path. However, they still couldn't defeat the ominous. At this moment, although he had become very strong, he couldn't take it lightly. After a while, Han Fei saw that the value of source power had disappeared. He could still see that the increase in source power had exceeded 40 million, but it had disappeared now? Could it be that the Star River source power was already so powerful that the combat power index was excluded? Han Fei's first reaction was to sense the black hole at the intersection of the 2 spiritual heritages. Source power could still be produced here. And if he guessed right, the strength of the source power might have approached 50 million. This meant that even if Han Fei didn't use the Star River origin, he still had the ability to fight a dominator with ordinary source power. Although the demon purification pot no longer showed the data on source power, Han Fei hadn't forgotten it. This was because he knew that his source power was different from the source power condensed by sea-quelling gods through their divine persona. He had dual spiritual heritages and walked the path of the god-fiend body. This path was separate from the supreme divine technique. Now, he had mastered the supreme divine technique, but because he didn't have any follow-up thoughts, he definitely hadn't mastered the god-fiend body. If he mastered the god-fiend body, would the black hole also produce Star River source power? If that was the case, he still had a lot of room for improvement. As for Little Black and Little White, they were slowly swallowing stars, trying to swallow a Star River. The journey was long and would probably not end anytime soon. As for the Emperor Sparrow, it was useless to be anxious at this moment. If he wanted to make a breakthrough, he had to wait for the battle on the first battlefield to end, and the Sea Realm had to win. Only in this way could the divine beasts and ferocious beasts return, the strange beasts reappear, and then he could make a breakthrough. Han Fei said, "Ling Lan, let's go back." In the past 13 years, Han Fei had been consolidating his cultivation and steadily advancing to the Dominator realm, so he had the time to explore and study the Sea of Stars. Now that his strength had been completely stabilized, he knew that a new round of battles would definitely begin soon. Another moment later. Sea Realm, the former site of the chaotic divine race, where the ancient divine vine grew. As soon as Han Fei appeared, a blood-colored long knife came at him. This broadsword was the creation blood sky blade. With Han Fei's current resources, it was too easy for him to repair it. Besides, this time, Han Fei didn't repair the blood sky blade with an ultra-quality nature spiritual treasure, but with a supreme nature treasure. In the Battle of the Eternal Race, the Dominator suppressed by Jing Guangming once erupted with fist light and fought Han Fei. At that time, there was a divine ring on his fists that was cut apart by Han Fei's broadsword. Han Fei used that ring to rebuild the blood sky blade. Different from the infinity water, the blood sky blade could be strengthened by drinking blood or swallowing souls, and could be rebuilt. Besides, its fighting intent improved with its master. When its master became a supreme dominator, the blood sky blade was also stained with Han Fei's supreme will. Han Fei raised his hand and tapped the blood sky blade. "Thank you for your hard work." Buzz. The blood sky blade trembled slightly, as if it was saying, "It's just a vine. What's the big deal?" At this moment, the divine vine seemed to have sensed Han Fei's arrival, so the barrier immediately glowed, obviously trying to block Han Fei. However, Han Fei sneered. "Do you think this kind of barrier can still stop me?" Han Fei approached and pressed a palm on the barrier. In the next moment, Han Fei felt the power of heaven and earth colliding with him. It was not the Star River source power, but a simple energy counterforce. However, this counterforce was immediately swallowed by Han Fei, unable to even dissipate. In the next moment, Han Fei's palm passed through the barrier, and then he walked into the barrier. This time, the entire divine vine began to tremble slightly. Han Fei, on the other hand, frowned slightly. The information of the divine vine seemed to appear in his eyes, but it was extremely vague. In the end, only a little information appeared. Name: Primordial Divine Embryo. Introduction: Ancient life vine that penetrates the primordial and the chaos and can give birth to the purest primordial creature. Yes, there were only these 2 lines of information, and the introduction was Not complete. The demon purification pot was in its complete state at this moment. It could be said to be at its peak in history. But it still couldn't read much information about this divine vine, which showed that this divine vine was extremely extraordinary. Primordial divine embryo? In fact, Han Fei had always been a little curious. In the chaotic era, there was indeed a large amount of primordial mist. The abrupt growth of the population of all races was because of this primordial mist. And in the chaotic mist, there were mainly various supreme nature treasures. Even if there were creatures born, they wouldn't be able to quickly create a race like the primordial mist. At that time, for the sake of the primordial mist, all races fought. Clearly, the primordial mist was stronger than the chaotic mist to nurture life. However, in the chaotic era, there was mostly chaotic mist. Then where did the primordial mist come from? From the simple introduction of the primordial divine embryo, Han Fei seemed to have discovered some secrets. Since it was said that this vine penetrated the primordial and the chaos, did it mean that there was another primordial world in addition to the chaotic sea of stars? And the 6 ancient lineages were very likely not products of the chaotic sea of stars at all, but outsiders? Although there was little information, it raised many doubts in Han Fei's heart. If there was a primordial world, what was that world like? Why did the things in that world appear in the chaotic sea of stars? Han Fei couldn't help but think of the death god. From the looks of it, the people who had lived the longest in the sea of stars were probably eldest senior brother, the death god, and the master of time. Eldest senior brother and the master of time were both trapped. The only one he could contact was the death god. After a while, Han Fei came to the immortal temple. This time, the 10 Yama kings were not around, and the death god only appeared casually in white. Before Han Fei said anything, the death god said, as expected of the supreme technique, "You've completed your advancement so quickly. Why, are you going to attack?" Han Fei said, "Not yet. I have a question to ask you, Senior Death God." "Oh?" Without hesitation, Han Fei asked, "Senior, how much do you know about the primordial?" "The primordial?" The Death God was silent for a moment. "That's the origin of life. You should have seen the dead silence at the beginning of the chaos, right?" Han Fei nodded. When he comprehended the profound meaning of death and was in a dead state, he had seen the chaos revive from the dead silence. The Death God said, "To be honest, I don't know either. However, in that initial period of time, I did see an extremely grand primordial mist. However, after I entered that primordial mist, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, the huge primordial mist had already dispersed into countless pieces. At the same time, it also made me who I am. Later, I wanted to enter the primordial mist, but it didn't seem to accept me anymore." "Huh?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Is the primordial mist conscious?" The Death God said, "I don't know. It might be a law similar to the chaotic world. I can tell you very little. I can only say that for a period of time, the primordial mist is called the mist of life and is regarded by people as the origin of life. Unfortunately, there were too many people snatching the primordial mist in the chaotic era, so there is very little primordial mist that can be seen now. In the Sea of Stars, there are probably primordial mist. Only in a few places. Where is it?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask. He felt that there must be some secret that was worth pursuing. The death god said leisurely, 2 places. One is the Sea of Bitterness, but the Sea of Bitterness is boundless. It's mainly a place to temper one's mind and comprehend the Tao. Although there is indeed some primordial mist there, it shouldn't be much. What about the other one? The death god smiled. That's also a forbidden sea in the raging sea. It's called the Mud Sea, also known as the ruins of ancient gods. You can understand it as another place similar to a path of no return in the Sea of Stars. However, as for that road, how should I put it? You should have been to the border of the Sea of Stars, right? Han Fei's heart stirred. A place similar to a path of no return? But then Han Fei said, what does this have to do with the seaward boundary? It seems impossible to cross the border of the Sea of Stars. The death god said, the end of that road seems to lead to the unknown, but it can't be entered. It's like the border of the Sea of Stars, impossible to cross. I, Void, Time, and Patriarch of the myriad gods have all tried it. It can be said that in history, everyone who became a dominator has also tried it. This is because at the end of that road, primordial mist spews out from time to time. We thought that behind that road, there must be a mysterious place, or another world. Buzz. Han Fei was shocked. Sure enough, everyone had this guess? Han Fei was puzzled. No one tried it after that? The death god smiled. With your current strength, you can take a look. Even now, there are still people willing to go there because, not only are there countless inheritances of ancient gods on that path, but it's also very effective for the cultivation of monarchs. Half of the divine realm powerhouses in the Sea of Stars come from there. And at the end of that path, there will occasionally be primordial mist spewing out. By the way, the god of war should be very familiar with this place. Oh? Han Fei couldn't help but feel refreshed. Is the god of war here? Han Fei hadn't thought of that. However, why was this guy here? He walked the supreme technique. Did he think he could walk a path that even a dominator couldn't walk? After chatting with the death god for a while, Han Fei said goodbye. After a while, Han Fei took Shiman Linglan's hand and said, Linglan, let's go see an old acquaintance. Shiman Linglan was puzzled. An old acquaintance? Teacher Beast King? Or Teacher Water Immortal? The only old acquaintances Shiman Linglan could think of were the Beast King and the Water Immortal. Apart from them, she really couldn't think of any other old acquaintances between her and Han Fei. Han Fei smiled mysteriously. We've never met this person, but we've known each other for a long time. Ah? Although the battle on the first battlefield was urgent and Han Fei wanted to take action as soon as possible, he knew that once he went there, it would be the start of a full-scale battle on the first battlefield. If he didn't go, there would be a stalemate. If he could take advantage of this period of time to increase his strength a little, even if it was just one more star river, it might be enough to change the situation of the battle. After all, a dominator who had advanced normally might only have one star river at the beginning. While for him, Han Fei, with the enhancement of the path of invincibility, increasing one star river was equivalent to increasing 2. He was not only going to the Mud Sea where the god of war was. That was just his first stop after his promotion. The Mud Sea. This place was enveloped by divine might along the way. The chaotic chi here was completely different from the chaotic chi outside. It was like the difference between a clear water pond and a muddy river channel. The chaotic chi here was extremely turbid. Once one fell into it, it would be difficult to move. Besides, because too many gods had died here, this area was full of divine might. If a monarch came, he would be caught in it and couldn't extricate himself. It was like a person swallowed by a swamp couldn't save himself. Han Fei and Shiman Linglan stood in the quagmire. In their eyes, the law of time was operating at the same time. They were all retracing time. Han Fei saw that there were hundreds of monarchs moving forward with difficulty even at the entrance of the Mud Sea. They were passively carrying the cleansing of the divine might here and using it to cultivate. Among these people, some were walking forward, and some were walking back. However, after thousands of years, they had only walked tens of millions of kilometers. Some people were even caught in it and couldn't move. Thousands of years ago, a sea-quelling god came here and pulled out these monarchs one by one like pulling out radishes. Needless to say, these were definitely a sea-quelling god on the first battlefield. They knew that there were many monarchs in this mud sea. In the middle of a battle, instead of letting them be trapped here, he might as well take these monarchs to the first battlefield to fight. After a while, Han Fei and Shiman Linglan looked at each other in bewilderment. Because they found that at least 100,000 monarchs had been pulled out like radishes. And from the depths of the Mud Sea, there was no shortage of gods who had been pulled out. Shiman Linglan said, "Although I know this place, I've never been here. However, it seems that every million years, strong masters would come here to pull out, to save people. It's precisely because of this that monarchs keep coming here to cultivate." Han Fei laughed. There are thousands of paths of cultivation, but they chose the most difficult one. If they're unlucky, they will probably be trapped here for at least 1,000,000 years. Shiman Linglan said, "It might be more than that. The deeper you go into the Mud Sea, the more the chaotic turbid chi is. In some places, even the sea quelling god will find it difficult to pass. However, I'm afraid there's already no one on this road now, right? After all, there is a fierce battle on the front line, so most of the people who cultivate here have probably been taken away." Han Fei said, "Not necessarily. Let's go deeper and take a look." The chaotic turbid chi was indeed extremely difficult for monarchs, but it was relatively friendly to gods. If one's strength reached the god-slaying level, it was usually difficult to be trapped. Of course, if one encountered a place where a sea-quelling god died, even a god-slaying level powerhouse might die. At this moment, in the depths of the Mud Sea, a burly figure was struggling to dig through the chaotic turbid chi, moving forward step by step like a turtle. Slow but firm. As he crawled, he cursed, ****, smelly fish shit, which **** created. This supreme technique? I curse your ancestors. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have cultivated it even if you gave it to me for free. ****, whose brain was drilled by the ominous Han Fei is also a little ****. Why hasn't he mastered the supreme technique yet? I don't know where he has gone. I haven't been able to contact him for thousands of years. He clearly got a treasure mountain, but he didn't give it to me at all. Little ****, next time he asks me for help, I'll just ignore him. This person was none other than the god of war. Perhaps because he was too Bored, cursing had become a habit, as if he was talking to him. Alas! You can scold, but why am I implicated? That treasure house is not mine. How can I share it with you? The god of war was stunned for a moment and muttered, son of AB*TCH, I'm hallucinating. Damn, should I blow myself up in advance? In the next moment, next to the god of war, a head stretched over. To be honest, Senior, it's a miracle that you can hold on until now. Shoot. The god of war was shocked by the sudden appearance of the head. You. Han Fei? How is it possible? How the F***ck did you get here? Suddenly, the god of war shivered. His face flushed and he swallowed with difficulty. His voice was trembling and distorted. You made a breakthrough? At this moment, the god of war was stunned. Han Fei even vaguely saw that. There seemed to be tears in the god of war's eyes. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Han Fei, I knew I didn't misjudge you. From the moment I saw you, I knew that you were talented, so I resolutely taught you my strongest technique. Speaking of which, you can be counted as my disciple. Han Fei wanted to roll his eyes at the god of war. Resolute my ass. No one knows how many people you've taught this technique to. In the wild ancient race, almost everyone has learned this supreme divine technique. Anyone who dares to take the risk can practice it as long as they meet the conditions. How do you have the cheek to acknowledge me as your disciple? How shameless! Han Fei sneered. Senior, if you say that, we won't have anything to talk about. You can just continue digging here. Nonsense. You're already here. How can you bear to see me suffer alone here? Old John, have helped you many times. You've already made a breakthrough. How can you bear to see me die in this damn place? Puff. Shiman Linglan couldn't help but smile. This god of war was quite interesting. Just as the giant king said, he was a very chatty person. Furthermore, he had an open personality. Although he wasn't handsome, he could make people feel close to him. Only then did the god of war notice Shiman Linglan. There was some confusion in his eyes, and then he seemed to remember something. His eyes widened. You. Alas, aren't you that crying little girl? Shiman Linglan's face immediately turned cold. When did I cry? The god of war sneered. The stupid giant king told me that when Han Fei ran away, you came to his door every day to cry and ask him to find me and ask me to help you find your little lover. In the end, I couldn't take it anymore and had to use the power of my clone to descend to the sea realm to calculate for you. However, not long after, you jumped into the river. You jumped into the time river. You made me waste a clone. Han Fei couldn't help tilting his head to look at Shiman Linglan, only to see that Shiman Linglan's face was flushed red. She even secretly glanced at Han Fei. I'm not crying. Han Fei couldn't help but tighten his grip on Shiman Linglan's hand. Han Fei said, okay. Old John, you have to be careful now. Linglan is a sea-quelling god now, a very powerful one. The god of war opened his mouth and widened his eyes. In the end, he said, I contributed. Han Fei and Shiman Linglan rolled their eyes at the same time. King. Contributed to everything? Old man, you think too highly of yourself. Han Fei knew the current state of the god of war with a glance. In less than 30,000 years, at most 25,000 years, the god of war would explode. Besides, his original body couldn't attack yet. Every time he attacked, he would explode in advance. The reason why he didn't explode now was that the old guy had swallowed 22 divine personas and used them to suppress himself. However, while these 22 divine personas helped him suppress his power, they would also absorb his blood, chi, and vitality, so the old guy had always needed something such as refined stars to restore his blood, chi, and vitality. However, once he used the refined stars, his strength would inevitably increase again. This was a vicious cycle. If no one helped him, in the end, there were only 3 possibilities for this old man. Firstly, the 22 divine personas couldn't suppress his power anymore and he exploded. Secondly, his chi and blood would be drained, and his physique would weaken and couldn't withstand his power. In the end, he would still explode. Thirdly, his vitality was swallowed by the divine personas, and he was sucked to death before he self-destructed. Then, these 22 divine personas would probably mutate because they absorbed too much of his power, becoming treasures like nature's spiritual treasures. In short, in either case, the god of war would die a horrible death. It was simply a huge tragedy. At present, according to Han Fei's perception, the combat power of the god of war's original body had exceeded 400,000 points. In this way, he could probably unleash 700,000 points of combat power. If he used a secret technique, he would be even stronger and could completely kill gods. And once the god of war completely released the power of the 22 divine personas, Han Fei believed that this old guy could unleash a power close to the sea-quelling god level in a short period of time, but it wouldn't exceed the boundary of the sea-quelling god, because he couldn't form source power. Han Fei had to admit that the god of war was indeed very strong. Before he went to the chaotic era, his combat power was at most 800,000. However, Han Fei could tell that the god of war must have modified his fundamental talent. It made sense. Only in this way could he hold on, and his body didn't explode even when his combat power had reached 700,000 points. Of course, in any case, the old man was still much weaker than him. At this moment, the god of war said excitedly, "Come on, Han Fei, teach me the way to make a breakthrough, quickly. I've been waiting for this day for too long." Han Fei. However, Han Fei just patted the thick arm of the god of war and thought to himself, "How should I tell you? Breaking the limit of the supreme technique. Sounds? You made it sound so easy. If it was really so easy, why did you teach it to so many people?" The god of war was puzzled. "What do you mean? Don't tell me you don't want to teach me? I, old Jean, treat you with all my heart. Every time you asked me to help you, I helped you. Don't be excited. Don't be excited yet. Release your soul." Hearing this, the god of war was overjoyed. Good, good. Come on, give me the way to make a breakthrough." Shiman Linglan secretly sighed, and Han Fei did point at the void. The scene of his breakthrough in the eternal race war was shown to the god of war. Indeed, on Han Fei's way of growth, the god of war had indeed helped him a lot, and was very happy to solve his doubts. Therefore, he was not stingy with his insights on the supreme path and his method of breakthrough. However, he didn't think that the god of war could copy his way. It wasn't that he didn't trust the potential of the god of war, but that it required too many conditions to break the limit of the supreme divine technique. 4. Example, the first Supreme had been a Supreme since he appeared and traveled the sea of stars. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to create the Supreme divine technique. For example, Songtian unified the 6 lineages and suppressed all races. For example, he had mastered the life law, as well as the secret of immortality. Even so, he had taken great risks. This was because the physique of a peak level great monarch couldn't withstand the corresponding divine tribulation of the supreme path at all. If he hadn't comprehended the supreme heart in time, he would have died even if he had mastered the original life law. As for the god of war, he couldn't be considered one of the 6 lineages, nor did he have enough luck. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been trapped here. But Han Fei wasn't sure. It was possible that the god of war had also mastered some kind of supreme Tao technique similar to the original life law, or a chance to comprehend the supreme heart. The god of war's eyes were closed, but the expression on his face became more and more solemn. After a while, he broke into a cold sweat. In the end, when he opened his eyes revealed confusion. Phew. Son of AB*TCH, so I don't have to hold on anymore. Just wait for death? After seeing Han Fei's tribulation scene, the god of war was stunned. Is that AF** King divine tribulation? How can a human transcend that? A god couldn't even withstand a random lightning arc of the first divine tribulation. After a few divine tribulations, a big clan with a billion-level population and 50,000 gods were wiped out. After watching it, the god of war was almost certain that it was impossible for him to survive the 5th and 6th divine tribulations. More importantly, the supreme ultimacy that Han Fei comprehended was too mysterious for him to understand at all. What made him even more confused was that Han Fei had destroyed hundreds of billions of creatures, but no negative karma came to him. This was simply unbelievable. The god of war was discouraged. He had thought that he was stuck here because he didn't find the way to break the limit of the supreme technique and couldn't comprehend it. But now it seemed that this thing was simply a technique to reach the sky in a single bound. If he couldn't transcend the tribulation, he would die. It was simple and violent, which he didn't expect at all. Han Fei was also a little emotional. This path wasn't easy to walk in the first place. After the first Supreme, only Songtian had succeeded. He didn't know if anyone after Songtian had succeeded. However, he was confident that he might be the only one who had succeeded since the Age of Gods. This success rate was really too small. He didn't mean to look down on the god of war, but he couldn't pass it. Even when he transcended the tribulation, he didn't dare to say that he could definitely pass it. Seeing that the god of war was stunned, Han Fei hurriedly said, "Old Jean, although I can't help you break the limit of the supreme divine technique, I can save you from death." The god of war couldn't help tilting his head and looking at Han Fei. How? Han Fei extended his hand, and the green jade stone bridge appeared in front of him. Han Fei said, "I have 2 ways. Firstly, after you kill yourself and enter the path of reincarnation, I'll let you be reborn with all your memories. With your talent, you just need to recultivate. Instead of spending 1,000,000 years digging in this quagmire, it's better to be reborn. If you're fast, you'll rise again in 1,000 years." Hearing this, the god of war couldn't help being a little shocked. Path of reincarnation? You have the path of reincarnation on you? Han Fei shrugged and smiled. It's just an opportunity, an opportunity. The god of war was obviously tempted, but then he thought for a moment and shook his head. Forget it. I know that something happened on the first battlefield. The people in the Mud Sea have all been pulled out. The reason why they didn't pull me out is that the sea-quelling god who came to pull me out is an acquaintance of mine, and I can blow myself up at any time, so I didn't leave. Although I don't know how dangerous the Sea of Stars is, I can feel from his tone that the future of the Sea of Stars is not that bright. It's very likely to be gone this time. If the Sea of Stars is gone, what's the use of my rebirth? I'll still die. So, what's the second way? Han Fei said, we cultivate the supreme technique at the same time, and I control the law of life. I can cut off these divine personas, absorb part of your power, and rebuild your body. However, at that time, you might only have 400,000 combat power. If nothing goes wrong, if you don't deliberately cultivate the supreme divine technique, you should be able to live for another million years. Of course, this method doesn't essentially resolve the problem. I don't recommend it. With your talent, it's not impossible for you to become a dominator if you recultivate. I choose the second. The god of war replied firmly. He had no intention of breaking the limit of the supreme divine technique now. In fact, if he had had such an opportunity earlier, he would have chosen it 180,000 years ago, and he would definitely have chosen the first one. However, it was too late now. The god of war said, I, old Jean, have been a heavenly talent for a lifetime. But I almost spent half of my life in this damn place. I'm already full of anger. Come on, I have to kill enemies to vent. Okay. Han Fei reached out and grabbed, and all the 22 divine personas in the god of war's body were taken out. Bam. 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 In the blink of an eye, all the divine personas exploded, but their power didn't exceed the range of Han Fei's hand before they were swallowed by Han Fei in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, the god of war's heart trembled, thinking how great it would be if he could make a breakthrough too. Look at Han Fei. 2,000 years ago, he was only a great monarch, but now he was already a dominator. He was really envious. In the next moment, Han Fei shook his hand, and the god of war exploded. Han Fei just squeezed his fingers and drew a portion of the power into his body. Then, the law of life surged in, and the body of the god of war was reconstructed in the blink of an eye. In less than 10 seconds, a new god of war appeared in front of Han Fei and Shiman Linglan. The god of war looked down at his new body and then activated his power, looking overjoyed. In millions of years, this was the first time he had felt so relaxed. There wasn't much power in his body and strength were just right. This relaxation made his spirit change. Ha ha ha, I'm back. Damn creator of the supreme technique. When I go back, I'll publish a book and spread it throughout the Sea of Stars, letting the world know that you're a fraud. Han Fei. Shiman Linglan. The god of war said, let's go. I don't want to stay in this damn place for a second. Huh, how did you know I was here? Did you find me with the vast ocean? Navigator? Why didn't you tell me in advance? Han Fei smiled. We came to see the end of the Mud Sea and saved you by the way. The god of war was lost for words. Now that you've become a dominator, your tone is completely different from before. The end of the Mud Sea? Why don't You take me with you? I've been here for 2 million years before I got here. I want to see it too. Hey, how long did it take you to get here? The god of war was calculating the strength of a dominator. Han Fei glanced at the god of war. This path is indeed not easy to walk. About 100 seconds. Forget it, let's go to the end of the mud sea. Han Fei couldn't help but laugh. Old John, since you've been here for so many years, have you seen the primordial purple chi? God of war, yes. I've seen it 73 times in total. However, each time it spewed out, it didn't take long. My original purpose of coming here was actually to seek an opportunity to make a breakthrough in the primordial purple chi. But I was disappointed. However, since I've already reached here, although it's difficult to move forward, it's difficult to turn back too. So I stayed here for so many years. Han Fei asked again, other than the primordial purple chi, are there any other strange phenomena? For example, are there any special creatures returning from the depths of the mud sea, or other strange phenomena? No. Not at all? Han Fei asked, but the god of war said clearly, other than the primordial purple chi, there is no abnormality at all. As for those who return from the depths of the mud sea, the sea-quelling gods can go over or return. Does this count? Han Fei shook his head slightly. No. What Han Fei wanted was not the primordial purple chi. If he wanted the primordial purple chi, there was primordial purple chi in the primordial purple gate. What he wanted to pursue was some secrets outside the Sea of Stars. God of war, why? You're already a dominator. Do you still need the primordial purple chi? Han Fei shrugged. What I want is the secrets behind it. Another moment later, Han Fei and the other two appeared in front of a space barrier adorned with a faint purple halo with a swish. As soon as he landed, the god of war cursed, so I've been walking alone for 2 million years and only walked halfway? While looking at the purple barrier in front of him, Han Fei casually replied. To the god of war, it's about time. Other great monarchs may only be able to walk 1/10 of the path you do in 2 million years. Be content. The god of war heaved a long sigh. Are we other great monarchs? Alas. Comparisons are really odious. My 2 million years is not even as worth it as a snap of your finger. When I defeat the ominous, if I'm still alive, I'll reincarnate. Alas, Han Fei, can I reincarnate into the human race? Han Fei said, not very likely. Oh, let's wait and see. This purple door is very magnificent. Can we enter it? The god of war was nagging, and Han Fei also felt that the purple barrier was more like a door, because it appeared here too abruptly. The mud sea was a place where chaotic turbid chi settled. It was hard to say how it was formed, but here, it was cut off by this purple barrier. Furthermore, it was like a flowing river, and there was suddenly a dam in the middle of the river blocking the upflowing water, making people wonder where it led to. Although the death god said that they had never entered it, Han Fei still had a trace of hope. This was because he was the supreme dominator. His will was not suppressed by the Sea of Stars. Han Fei pressed his palm on the purple barrier. In the next moment, a ripple rippled on the purple barrier, and a terrifying power instantly swept in all directions. A golden protective barrier appeared on Shiman Linglan and the god of war, respectively, blocking the shock. However, this blow failed to shake the purple barrier at all. However, Han Fei didn't have much hope. After all, even eldest senior brother hadn't discovered the unknown behind the barrier. Then, Han Fei's path of invincibility erupted, and his strength soared. He slashed in the air, and the sword of shattering fell on the purple barrier with a clang. At that moment, brilliant light dazzled, and a terrifying, suppressing pressure swept across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The god of war couldn't help but click his tongue. Is this the power of a dominator? If it weren't for Han Fei's protection, he wouldn't have been able to withstand a single aftershock. Buzz. Suddenly, Han Fei's eyes glittered, because he felt the purple barrier tremble. But before he had the time to be happy, a terrifying counterforce instantly pushed him back billions of kilometers. Clatter. Immediately afterward, a purple mist suddenly dissipated from the surface of the purple barrier. Primordial mist? In the next moment, Han Fei returned to the barrier, and the purple barrier had returned to calm. The 3 of them were in the primordial mist, and Han Fei seemed to feel some strange power. He had the primordial purple gate on him, which could dissipate primordial purple chi. However, the primordial purple chi seemed to only be able to help him cultivate. But he had already reached the dominator realm, so the help the primordial purple chi could provide was too limited. It was extremely difficult to increase the number of star rivers one could control. It would take at least millions of years. However, the primordial mist that escaped from behind this purple barrier contained a large amount of life power different from the law of life. Han Fei couldn't help being delighted. This is the primordial mist of the chaotic era. While Han Fei was parasitizing Songtian, since Songtian became a dominator, he had collected the primordial mist many times to strengthen the human race. Han Fei suddenly said, Linglan, can you feel the power of laws in this primordial mist? Hearing this, Shiman Linglan carefully sensed for a moment. There seems to be. But it's too scattered, and I'm not familiar with this law. Of course not, because this is not the law of the chaotic sea of stars at all. Han Fei opened his palm, and some purple light gathered in his palm. After only a moment, 2 small purple crystals condensed in his palm. The god of war couldn't help but ask, what is this? I've absorbed the primordial purple chi too. Why haven't I seen this before? Han Fei said, this is the law I mentioned. It's scattered in the primordial purple chi. Once it's condensed, it will become like this. It's full of vitality and some strange power. Only sea-quelling gods and above can perceive it. Shiman Linglan asked, is the primordial mist really from outside? Han Fei nodded slightly, and relevant information appeared in his eyes. Name, Purple Chi Divine Crystal. Introduction, a crystal of the primordial law. It can strengthen or stimulate the power of bloodline, increase life potential, and promote vitality. The power of the purple chi crystal is gentle and easy to help creatures of all races nurture their fetuses. Quality, law. Absorbable. Remarks, it's a law-type power not belonging to the chaotic star sea, but it's suitable for all creatures to use. Han Fei picked up a purple gas crystal and put it into his mouth. Crunch. Seeing that Han Fei directly chewed this thing, the god of war was lost for words. You dare to eat anything? Is this delicious? Han Fei smiled and said, it's not a matter of whether it's delicious or not. I just want to feel its law form. With that, Han Fei gave the other piece to Shiman Linglan, who was puzzled. Me too? Han Fei said, eat it. If I've guessed right, it's easy to have children after eating it. Ah? Shimin Linglan couldn't help but blush at Han Fei's words. She secretly spat, thinking, Han Fei is talking nonsense again. However, she still took the purple gas crystal and stuffed it into her mouth. God of War, what about mine? I want some too. Han Fei asked, are you going to have a baby too? Bah. Keep talking nonsense. This must be good stuff. I, old John, am so selfless to you, but you don't even give me a stone. Han Fei raised his hand and threw a wine gourd to the God of War. Compared to that, you'd better drink. You haven't tasted wine in millions of years. Right? Okay. The God of War immediately grinned. What he said was right. Eating stones was not as comfortable as drinking wine and eating meat. He could even abandon the supreme divine technique. What was a stone worth? As for Han Fei, after eating the purple gas crystal, he felt that the blood and qi in his body were surging. In the next moment, his blood and qi were surging like a tide, and some strange brilliance appeared on the surface of his body. At that moment, Han Fei's face suddenly changed, because he felt that his bloodline was triggered. There seemed to be a power trying to break out of his bloodline. Han Fei suddenly saw some ancient and unknown images. He seemed to see a figure opening the world in darkness and releasing light. Although this moment was too short, it left an unparalleled impression on Han Fei. It was an extremely magnificent image. At this moment, Shimin Linglan's qi and blood were also surging out of her body. At the same time, Shimin Linglan's strength seemed to have instantly soared. That kind of power seemed to have instantly made Shimin Linglan reach the peak of the sea-quelling god realm, vaguely showing signs of her breaking through the sea-quelling god realm and entering the dominator realm. The God of War was dumbfounded, and the wine in his mouth flowed out. Well, get me one of the stones, okay? Han Fei ignored him and looked at Shimin Linglan nervously. After half an hour, the power in Shimin Linglan's body slowly faded, and then she slowly opened her eyes. A look of disbelief appeared in Shimin Linglan's eyes. I seem to have comprehended the power of bloodline. What? Bloodline power? When he swallowed the purple qi crystal, Han Fei didn't take it seriously, because he felt that bloodline represented talent. His fast recovery, fast cultivation, and high potential were all passive powers of bloodline. This was the first time he had seen a human with a bloodline divine power. Han Fei asked, what power? Shimin Linglan said, I seem to be able to absorb the hope of the world and become stronger with it. I might know a way to break through to the dominator realm. Shimin Linglan also looked at Han Fei uncertainly, which stunned Han Fei. He knew how difficult it was to become a dominator. Even if Shimin Linglan didn't walk the supreme technique, how many people in the vast sea of stars could become a dominator? Even the most ordinary dominator could only appear once every millions of years. Wasn't Shimin Linglan's comprehension a little too fast? Although he knew that Shimin Linglan's Tao of Hope might be unique, an extremely rare great Tao, and her upper limit of growth must be extremely high, with this Tao and her spiritual heritage, she could become the 7th temple master of the Time Temple. However, how long had it been since Shimin Linglan entered the sea-quelling god realm? Even Han Fei couldn't help but be envious. The God of War hurriedly wiped his mouth. Han Fei, knock on this door a few more times. Give me a piece too. Maybe my supreme path can still work. There's Still hope. Hanfei was lost for words. Old John, can you stop interrupting me? Wait for me to figure it out. Then, Hanfei looked at Shiman Linglan. The strength of your source power just now instantly exceeded 40 million, right? Shiman Linglan nodded. To be precise, it might have reached 43 million, and my strength has increased by about 80%. However, that was stimulated by that stone. I don't seem to be able to completely control the power of my bloodline yet, so if I try again now, I might be able to increase it by 50%. What about you? A strange phenomenon seemed to have appeared just now. Han Fei's eyelids twitched crazily. Increase her strength by 80%? How strong would he be if his strength increased by 80%? Sure enough, he made the right choice to come to the Mud Sea. Immediately, Han Fei said, Linglan, old John, step back. I'm going to fight. Han Fei had always felt that bloodline was just a symbol of potential. Jiang Bai was powerful enough, wasn't he? His original body, the bloodline divine tree, had the #1 bloodline in the Sea of Stars and specialized in controlling the bloodlines of the myriad races in the Sea of Stars. But he was dead. But now, Shiman Linglan's sudden comprehension made Han Fei see a trace of hope. The power of Shiman Linglan's bloodline was related to hope. This meant that the birth of her bloodline power might be related to her original great Tao. Shiman Linglan and the god of war retreated. This time, Han Fei activated the sword of breakthrough again and slashed down with all his strength, causing the entire Mud Sea to tremble slightly. Clatter. A large amount of primordial purple chi dissipated again, as if it had been hit by his huge force and fell from the purple barrier. Although the death god told him that he couldn't break through here, he didn't say that bombarding this barrier would give birth to primordial purple chi. In the large amount of primordial purple chi, Han Fei condensed the law in it. Again. This time, he only condensed 2 small pieces. Han Fei was about to swallow them all in one bite, but on second thought, he immediately called Shiman Linglan and the god of war back. Han Fei handed a purple chi divine crystal to the god of war and said, Old John, don't say that I didn't think of you. However, you should have cultivated with the primordial purple chi before, right? Have you never felt any bloodline anomalies? The god of war hurriedly grabbed the divine crystal and shook his head quickly. No, not at all. The primordial purple chi I absorb is not mainly for cultivation, but to extend my vitality and strengthen my potential. Besides, I'm not the only one absorbing the primordial purple chi. Some gods absorb more than me. Han Fei nodded slightly. It seemed that the power of the law and the primordial purple chi was limited. Once the power of this law was extracted, the primordial purple chi would only be a relatively pure energy that could only be used for cultivation. So it wouldn't be very useful to him. Another moment later, a strange phenomenon did appear on the god of war's body. The god of war's originally huge body suddenly expanded several times, and his entire body was like a red-hot crab. But immediately afterward, his body seemed to be covered in a layer of scarlet rocks. It was the convergence of the law of strength. And its level was not low. Roar. Behind the god of war, a huge phantom of a mountain giant seemed to appear. Mountain giant? Shiman Linglan said, No, it's the giant spirit god race. According to the records of the Time Temple, the people of this race are all born with great strength and have extremely high talent and affinity for strength techniques. I understand. Senior God of War has the dual bloodlines of the human race and the giant spirit god race, so in the end, he became a member of the wild giant race. Han Fei couldn't help but click his tongue. People in the past really knew how to play. This giant spirit god race is obviously very big. The human race is so small, but they can still give birth to offspring. As expected, love knows no race. Heh. How do you have the cheek to say that? Han Fei? At this moment, the god of war roared, I've atavized. Han Fei nodded. Yes. You've atavized. What did you comprehend? Han Fei could feel that the power of the god of war had more than doubled, and this didn't seem to be the real power of the god of war's bloodline. Raging flames burned on the fists of the god of war. He said, I actually have a bloodline inheritance? Han Fei's heart stirred. What did you inherit? The god of war said, the strength fire divine fist, an inherited secret technique that can burn the law of strength. It can increase my combat power by about 50%. In addition to the improvement of my physique, my strength has increased by nearly 2 times. If I had known that my bloodline was so powerful, I wouldn't have cultivated the supreme divine technique. The god of war was really complaining. The supreme divine technique had indeed allowed him to embark on an extremely powerful path, but if he had long dug out the power of his bloodline, even an ordinary great monarch could cultivate to the level beyond the extreme Tao. With the talent of the god of war, it was completely possible for him to directly cross the realm of gods. At that time, he would at least be at the god-slaying level after the breakthrough. With a little polishing, it was completely possible for him to become a sea-quelling god. Unfortunately, it was all too late. No one knew that the primordial purple chi would have such an effect. To discover and make use of this power, one had to be at least a dominator. Even the sea-quelling gods could only barely perceive it, so only dominators could know this secret. However, the death god didn't say it explicitly before. Could it be that he kept him in suspense? But recently, he had chatted a lot with senior sister Shenlu. Why didn't senior sister Shenlu remind him either? He almost missed this opportunity. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Han Fei's heart stirred. Did senior sister Shenlu really know this secret? Han Fei immediately activated the void mark. In the next moment, senior sister Shenli's slightly hoarse voice rang. Little junior brother, have you consolidated your cultivation? Han Fei nodded. Yes. My cultivation has been stabilized. Senior sister Shenlu asked, how much star rivers have you controlled? 9. On the other side, Shenlu paused for a long time and said, very good. Are you ready? Han Fei felt that something was wrong with senior sister Shenlu. Although senior sister Shenlu should be quite surprised, she wasn't surprised enough. And her tone was relatively calm. Was it because his current strength wasn't enough? Han Fei said, not yet, but whether I'm ready or not, I can take action when necessary. But that's not why I'm here today. I have something else to do. Senior sister, do you know if there's a power in the primordial purple chi that can stimulate the bloodline? Shenlu was puzzled. There is a special power of laws, but the power of that kind of law is gentle. It's only extremely effective in nurturing the fetus. I've never heard of it stimulating the bloodline. Where did you hear that? Han Fei was shocked to hear that. Senior Sister Shunlu didn't know? Han Fei couldn't help but look at Shiman Linglan and then at the god of war. He had a bold idea. Could it be that this purple chi divine crystal was only effective on the ancient 6 lineages? Han Fei's heart stirred. It was indeed possible. He suddenly remembered that Song Tian didn't have an original great Tao like his, but he could also unleash the combat power of a sea-quelling god when he was a great monarch. He only knew that Song Tian used 2 secret techniques from the beginning to the end. When Han Fei parasitized him, he only felt one secret technique and never found the second. Now that he thought about it, it was very likely that Song Tian had already activated the power of his bloodline when they met. However, even in the chaotic era, there wasn't much primordial purple chi. Furthermore, most of the primordial purple chi was snatched for prospering races, so this matter wasn't clearly recorded. And Song Tian was the disciple of the First Supreme, so the First Supreme might have activated the power of the bloodline for Song Tian from the beginning. Because the extraction requirements of the purple chi divine crystal were too high, only a dominator or above could do it. Therefore, this way of activating bloodline could only be spread among very few people. With this in mind, Han Fei understood. Han Fei replied, "It's not what I heard. I'll tell you when I figure it out. By the way, senior sister, how is the situation on the first battlefield now?" Han Fei knew that he didn't have much time. Every day he delayed, some people might die on the first battlefield. However, he had just finished his advancement, so it was not good to blindly join in a war. Han Fei had even planned for 100 years to deal with the eternal race. Now that he was already a dominator, every more day he planned would increase his chances of winning. Therefore, although he knew that the people on the first battlefield were in trouble, Han Fei knew that he shouldn't take action until Senior Sister Shunlu gave him a signal. Senior Sister Shunlu said, "We've sacrificed a lot. We might not have 100 years for you to prepare. At present, the ominous is deliberately consuming our combat power. When our combat power is weakened to a certain extent, I will call you." Okay. After a simple conversation with Senior Sister Shunlu, Han Fei had already guessed that the primordial purple gate could help the growth of the ancient divine vine. This didn't seem right. If the ancient divine vine was a product of the chaotic world, why would it need the help of the primordial purple gate? If the ancient divine vine wasn't a product of the chaotic world, neither were the 6 ancient lineages. That was why Han Fei dared to guess that the purple chi divine crystal was only specially helpful to the bloodlines of the 6 lineages. As for the place where the chaotic world and the primordial purple chi came from, what was the relationship between the two, and what secrets were behind them, they were probably not something he could explore now. At least, he couldn't cut through the purple chi barrier now. Another moment later, Han Fei attacked again, trying to shake the purple chi barrier, but he found that there was less and less primordial purple chi escaping. The third time, he only condensed 1 purple chi crystal. Then, after 2 consecutive tries, the primordial purple chi that escaped from the purple chi barrier barely condensed a purple chi divine crystal. The god of war was surprised. "That's it?" Han Fei frowned. It was indeed not enough. A purple chi divine crystal could only stimulate the power of his bloodline for a short time. He couldn't help but look at Shiman Linglan, and she said, "I think it will work." The god of war was dumbfounded. "Work? What will work?" Han Fei frowned slightly. Unlike the chaotic mist that still exists, the Primordial purple chi is almost extinct. The primordial purple chi in the chaotic era is also limited. If I use it, it's very likely to cause some unknown impact to future generations. Shiman Linglan didn't care. Can it have a greater impact than the ominous? Shiman Linglan clearly meant to return to the chaotic era, where there was a large amount of primordial purple chi. Anyway, with Han Fei's current strength, he could come and go very quickly and would hardly waste any time. But Han Fei still hesitated. Let's try to find it from this era first. If we really can't find it, we'll go back. God of War, well, where are you going? Bring me with you? Han Fei was lost for words. Old John, you don't even know where we are going. And you want to go with us? God of War, with your luck, you're obviously going to find the primordial mist now. If you find a lot of it, I'll have a share. Han Fei rolled his eyes. Have you forgotten the supreme technique you cultivated? I've only temporarily weakened you. Besides, your bloodline has been stimulated. Even if I give you all these divine crystals, can it stimulate your bloodline again? Shiman Linglan smiled and said, Senior God of War, we have to go to the Sea of Bitterness now. Upon hearing this, the God of War immediately shook his head and said, Then forget it. Then go by yourselves. I've suffered for 2 million years. I don't want to suffer in the Sea of Bitterness again. Obviously, the God of War knew what the Sea of Bitterness was and was unwilling to go there. Han Fei said, Old John, I'll send you back to the Sea Realm. In a few decades, there will be a great battle in the raging sea. If you still want to fight, go back and adapt to the power of your bloodline. You can use it soon. Fine. Pa. Han Fei tapped his finger, and with a swish, the distanceless gate appeared. Here. The God of War was surprised. Is this the distanceless gate? It can already be used at will? A line of words appeared on the distanceless gate. Can we take action now? Han Fei said, Not yet. I'll call you if I attack. Help me send the God of War back to the wild ancient race. Okay. I'll wait for you. Without chatting with the God of War, Han Fei sent him away. This old guy was always nagging and had tons of questions. How could he have the time to answer him one by one now? After sending the God of War away, Shiman Linglan sighed slightly. It's actually not easy for the God of War. He has persisted on this path for too long. I know. In fact, he still has hope, so he agreed to preserve the supreme technique. If this wasn't the Doomsday Era, even if he reincarnated, it was still possible for him to embark on the supreme technique again. Unfortunately, Han Fei secretly sighed. He sighed that the God of War was born at the wrong time. If it were the chaotic era or the primordial era, it was possible for the God of War to clear this path. Unfortunately, hard work was not everything in the world. Sometimes, no matter how hard you worked, it would be all in vain in the end. Han Fei said, Let's go to the Sea of Bitterness first. Shiman Linglan asked, Aren't you going to absorb these 3 divine crystals first? Han Fei shook his head. Not enough. The Sea of Bitterness was a forbidden sea, where infinite troubles and hardships in the world gathered. The Sea of Bitterness was not in reality, but an illusion. Therefore, the Sea of Bitterness could actually be called the Sea of Illusions. The so-called boundless sea of misery didn't mean that one couldn't get out after he went in. Instead, it meant that once he fell into such trouble and suffering, it was very difficult for him to let go. If he couldn't let it go, he wouldn't be able to comprehend it. If he couldn't comprehend it, he wouldn't be able to obtain the Tao. Then he would be trapped in it forever, enduring the torment in his heart. Of course, for the current Han Fei and Shimen Linglan, the troubles and hardships in the sea of bitterness were actually very difficult to shake them. However, the sea of bitterness was not in reality, but an illusion. Since it was illusory, why was there primordial purple chi? Han Fei was very curious about this. After sending the god of war away, the distanceless gate sent Han Fei and Shimen Linglan to the sea of bitterness. When the two of them appeared, they saw boundless death energy. Is this the immortal temple? Han Fei and Shimen Linglan were a little stunned. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the distanceless gate. Old distanceless. Are you sure you didn't come to the wrong place? Isn't this the immortal temple? He's not wrong. Just as Han Fei asked this question, the white-cloaked figure he had just seen appeared opposite Han Fei and Shimen Linglan. The visitor was certainly the death god. He smiled faintly. I didn't expect you to come so soon. I haven't even finished a pot of tea. Swish. The distanceless gate disappeared, and Han Fei was lost for words. Do you control the sea of bitterness? At this point, how could Han Fei not understand? The death god smiled faintly as an admission. He said, actually, you've once experienced the sea of bitterness for a period of time. Han Fei couldn't help raising his eyebrows. The 300-year reincarnation? Back then, Han Fei came to the immortal temple to seek his original law. After 300 years of reincarnation, he comprehended the profound meaning of death. He just didn't expect that what he experienced was a part of the sea of bitterness. The death god nodded slightly. That's right, but your experience is just a part of the infinite sea of bitterness. The real sea of bitterness is much more complicated than your experience. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, Senior Death God, did you know that I would come to the sea of bitterness to find the primordial mist? The Death God said indifferently, I've lived too long and know too much. I just want to see if you can open the purple chi barrier. Unfortunately, you can't either. Han Fei laughed. Senior, you overestimate me. The Death God spread his hands slightly. There are only so many Dominator level powerhouses. There have only been a few Dominators of the 6 lineages since the chaos. Li Daoi once tried and shook the purple chi barrier, but he didn't succeed in the end. I thought that you were no weaker than Li Daoi. And you had even found the 10th vine of the demon purification pot. Perhaps you could do it? Unfortunately, I didn't expect you to be unable to shake the purple chi barrier either. Han Fei said helplessly, Senior, you can just say it. The Death God shook his head. No, there will be no surprise then. As for the sea of bitterness, do you want to experience it? Han Fei asked, will it take long? The Death God said, I'll awaken you if it takes too long. Of course, if you want to take the primordial mist first, you can. In this sea of stars, the primordial mist has almost disappeared, and I don't have much here. Besides, your 2 senior sisters have used part of it. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Senior Death God, it's very urgent. Can I use the primordial mist first before looking at the sea of bitterness? However, the Death God smiled. It's all right. However, Boyd once told me that If you come to find the primordial mist one day, you might as well enter the sea of bitterness first. However, it's up to you how to choose. Eldest senior brother? Han Fei's heart stirred. Eldest senior brother had already expected that he would come to find the primordial mist? Han Fei was silent for a moment. I'll enter the sea of bitterness first. It was impossible for what eldest senior brother personally instructed him to do to be meaningless. He had specially instructed them to enter the sea of bitterness first. Obviously, in eldest senior brother's opinion, entering the sea of bitterness first seemed to be more important than obtaining the primordial mist. There must be something to it. Therefore, after hearing what the death god said, Han Fei immediately stopped persisting. He didn't persist because he was confident that no matter how boundless the sea of bitterness was, it couldn't trap him now. Han Fei couldn't help but look at Shiman Linglan, and Shiman Linglan said, I'm going too. Perhaps I'll come out faster than you. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Okay. Han Fei didn't know where Shiman Linglan got her confidence from, but it made sense. Shiman Linglan was extremely determined. Otherwise, she wouldn't have jumped into the time river and comprehended the Tao of Hope. The death god smiled faintly, and a huge bubble appeared in his eyes. This bubble was as big as a star river. Han Fei was puzzled. Is this the sea of bitterness? Does it have a physical body? The death god said calmly, you'll know when you enter. Han Fei didn't hesitate but held Shiman Linglan's hand. The two of them looked at each other and stepped into the bubble without hesitation. In the next moment, when Han Fei and Shiman Linglan entered this place, they discovered that in this bubble, there were infinite drops of liquid floating. Han Fei saw that every drop of water seemed to contain a world, in which all kinds of strange things seemed to be happening. There were so many such water droplets that they were almost endless. And the space in the bubble was as big as a star river. As the two of them scanned around with their perception, Han Fei found that at this moment, two figures, one green and one red, were sitting cross-legged in the endless water droplets. Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus? A long time ago, about 3,000 years ago, Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus had already entered the Sea of Bitterness. Now, they were still in the Sea of Bitterness. At this moment, both of them were very calm. Their soul power covered a large area, and in the area they enveloped, the water droplets were emitting a crystal luster. Obviously, they were immersed in the water droplets. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. It's really an excellent place to temper the heart. No wonder the Sea of Bitterness is boundless and easy to sink into. Shiman Linglan smiled. There are only those things in the world. Happiness is the same, and so is suffering. Let's compete and see who ends first. Han Fei couldn't help but laugh. Okay. Shiman Linglan's source power instantly covered this place, and in the next moment, she also sat cross-legged. Seeing this, Han Fei didn't wait anymore and also covered this place with his mind. Buzz. After Han Fei covered the endless water droplets here, he immediately found that his mind had been torn into billions. Even though Han Fei was now a Dominator-level powerhouse, it was extremely difficult to split his mind into so many parts at once. Therefore, Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus only covered a part of the area, not the entire bubble space. Shiman Linglan should have experienced the same as him. If her mind was too scattered, she would definitely lose herself easily. Immediately, Han Fei understood the first difficulty of the Sea of Bitterness. which was to get lost. After a while, countless Han Fei saw countless worlds. These worlds contained billions of races. No matter which world he was in, Han Fei usually appeared as an ordinary person. At the moment he appeared in this world, because his mind was too scattered and his will was not condensed, he seemed to have forgotten who he was. At that moment, Han Fei might be from another race, an ant, a heavenly talent, a monarch, an ordinary person, an old man in his twilight years, a young man, a child, or a disabled person. They were either cultivating, studying, experiencing love, running for a living, experiencing death, just welcoming a new life, eating crazily, or living a life of luxury. At that moment, Han Fei had too many identities, including almost all professions, identities, and hardships in the world. Whether it was the identity Han Fei obtained at this moment, the difficulties he experienced, or the countless mental tortures, they were actually very ordinary. In the end, he couldn't escape the emotions of joy, anger, grief, joy, love, evil, and desire. He couldn't escape the confusion of life and death, the desire of the human heart, or the obsession on cultivation. Therefore, soon, after only a few days, Han Fei's scattered will had mostly woken up. If this was all there was to the sea of bitterness, it would seem too easy. After Han Fei regained consciousness, he transformed into individuals and lived in different races in different ways. Yes, he didn't want to leave the sea of bitterness immediately, but lived in such a way. He believed that Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus wouldn't be trapped by these. Refining the heart in the mortal world was about tempering the mind. In the end, it would all become a part of one's will. Therefore, countless Han Fei knew that he had just passed the trial of being lost. Not being lost was the beginning of tempering. However, he was different from Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus. Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus really needed to temper their hearts in the mortal world. Because they were born extraordinary and had unparalleled talent, they had almost never experienced the human world. However, he had climbed up from the secular world. Logically speaking, this training wouldn't be very effective on him. It might even be ineffective at all. This couldn't allow him to obtain strength. In that case, why did eldest senior brother let him enter the sea of bitterness first? Billions of Han Fei were thinking about this. Among them, in a certain small city of a certain world, there was a certain Han Fei's avatar, called Fang Jing. Beside him was a white-haired old man who was observing the world. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder how much of the world the old man could see. It must be less than one of Han Fei's billions. At this moment, it was cold, but today was the day of the city's gathering, so there were many people on the road. There were an old man selling firewood, beggars, diners eating at the stalls, a woman languidly pushing open a window and looking out, a peddler sighing, a woman bargaining for a bundle of firewood, and children running and playing, holding green fruits high in their hands, smiling. The old man suddenly stopped and looked at Han Fei. Fang Jing. Do you feel anything? Han Fei had already taken the entirety of this place into his eyes, because he knew that everyone had their own life opportunities, birth, old age, illness, and death. They all had their own hardships that couldn't be resolved. Even if he was a dominator, he couldn't resolve the hardships of everyone in the world. Han Fei said casually, "Good." "Good? What's good about it?" The old man said, "I don't think they're good at all. Look at the old man who sells firewood. This bundle of dry firewood is no more expensive than a green fruit in a child's hand. Is it good? Look at the beggar along the street. He's actually a scholar. His wife and children are seriously ill and dying. As a scholar, he was forced to do such a thing. Is it good? Look at the lamenting peddler. The cotton clothes he sells were faked and his life savings were wasted. Is it good? Look at the woman upstairs. Her husband left in a hurry and said that he would return. She waited here bitterly for 13 years. Her appearance gone, but that man didn't return. Is it good? The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Teacher, firewood is not as expensive as green fruit, but look at the smile on his face the moment he sold the firewood and got the money. Is that smile real? That begging scholar was very protective of the food given to him by passers-by. He has learned how to cherish what he has owned, hasn't he? That lamenting peddler once mixed sand with grain when he started to do business. Isn't this karma? The woman upstairs looks relaxed. There is a letter in her room. She will go far in a few days and has already put the past down. Things in the world don't go as planned. Having a thing or two meet our expectations is already comforting enough. Isn't it good? Everyone is like this. It's good. The white-haired old man laughed. That's right. This is what all living beings are like. Life can be sweet, sour, bitter, or spicy. Life is not perfect, but they've lived their lives. All living beings are in different states. Are the immortals and gods carefree? Han Fei said, they have their worries and joys too. It's not necessarily true that their lives are better than ordinary people's. After all, the world they see is only this big. The white-haired old man said, the heavens exist forever and there are countless ants. But if the heavens don't protect the ants, how can the heavens exist? Hearing this, Han Fei couldn't help but turn his head and look at the white old man deeply. For some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity. Han Fei replied, Teacher? I know what you mean. Humanity, self, all beings. You want to say that all beings are worthy. Whether it's interacting with others, harmonizing with all beings, or connecting with nature, where should I be? All living beings have their own destinies. We can only do our best and leave it to the heavens. The white-haired old man sighed slightly. What if you are the heavens? Han Fei raised his head slightly, looked at the noisy street, and said casually, Teacher, as you know, I walk the path of supreme, and my Tao has no heavens. Alas! Do you know that comprehending the Tao of all living beings can double your strength? Han Fei's eyelids blinked slightly. After a moment of silence, he shook his head. This Tao doesn't suit me, so I can't walk it. Teacher, you don't have to persuade me. But didn't you go to the path of no return? Why are you here? The white-haired old man sighed slightly. It's just a thought in the infinite. See? Forget it, everyone has their own goals. If you don't want to walk this Tao, don't. However, you've seen the Tao of all living beings after all. After that, the thought of the prophet dissipated in this vast world. After a long time, Han Fei sighed slightly. Teacher, I'm not as great as eldest senior brother. All living beings are like the world. Once I embark on this Tao, all that's left to me will be endless loneliness. But if there's a chance, I will pass it to someone suitable. Although few people had heard of the Sea of Bitterness, many people knew of it. There must be many people who could come to the Sea of Bitterness. However, there were probably very few people who could comprehend the Tao of all living beings. First of all, if one wanted to comprehend the Tao of all living beings, he had to at least have the strength of a sea-quelling god. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to tear the divine intent into countless pieces like Han Fei. Secondly, a person who could comprehend the Tao of all living beings needed to be able to carry the will of all living beings, which almost excluded sea-quelling gods. The reason why Han Fei could embark on this path, and the reason why his teacher knew that Han Fei could embark on this path and was waiting for him here, was that the Supreme Will was comparable to the chaotic world and could completely carry the will of all living beings. For example, eldest senior brother controlled the void and could accommodate all things. For example, the ominous absorbed the negative of all races. It was originally composed of the negative of all living beings, so the ominous gave birth to the Tao of all living beings. But of course, it was an evil Tao. For example, Jiang Bai had the bloodline of all races. If he could enter the Sea of Bitterness, he would definitely be able to control the Tao of all living beings too. It was just that he didn't have the chance. Otherwise, it was unknown who would win the battle of the eternal race. As for people like the Death God, the Master of Time, Songtian, and perhaps Han Fei's teacher, they could definitely grasp the Tao of all living beings. Through the 10 directions purgatory of the Death God, one could see people's life, death, and past. With the indestructibility and traceability of time, one could study the myriad races in the infinite ocean. Songtian was a supreme and the king of the world, so he could use the luck of all races. Because of these conditions that others could hardly achieve, if these people wanted, they could grasp the Tao of all living beings. However, why didn't they master this power? This was because for people who walked the Tao of all living beings, all living beings were no different. Their goal was only to save the entire world. To put it bluntly, they were heartless. To put it nicely, it was the Tao of all living beings, but to put it bluntly, they had no emotions. As for why eldest senior brother was so protective of his junior brothers and sisters, it seemed that he still had feelings for them. Han Fei guessed that either eldest senior brother's Tao of all living beings was not complete, or eldest senior brother had some special power to resist this Tao of all living beings. He could ask eldest senior brother about this in the future. Therefore, it was not that the Death God and the others couldn't take this path, but that they didn't want to. Cultivating this Tao, they would have no self. They were also one of the living beings. There was no difference. If he really reached this state, life would be meaningless. Han Fei might as well swallow the fruit of creation and assimilate into the world in the end. And why did his teacher want him to embark on this path? Either his teacher misunderstood him, or his teacher just wanted to give him such a choice. The reason why he took Han Fei wrong was that the fundamental purpose of Han Fei and Shiman Linglan returning to the chaotic era was to deal with the ominous. Perhaps his teacher thought that he was a selfless and fearless person who could sacrifice himself for the sake of the myriad races in the infinite ocean. But Han Fei didn't think it was possible, because with his teacher's wisdom, it shouldn't be difficult for him to see through his nature. Then, his teacher was trying to give him another choice. The supreme technique was the strongest technique. In terms of will, it was completely above ordinary dominators. If such a supreme embarked on the path of all living beings, he would definitely become extremely powerful. If what his teacher said was true, once Han Fei embarked on this path, he might instantly control 18 pieces of star river origin power. Plus the path of invincibility, the result could be imagined. However, the first supreme didn't choose it, nor did Songtian, let alone him. This was because he had a supreme heart. Removing the distracting thoughts in his heart, the countless torn will intents quickly returned. Han Fei's original body, which was sitting cross-legged, slowly opened his eyes, and billions of wisps of will intents returned. However, the moment Han Fei opened his eyes, he saw that Shiman Linglan was leaning on his shoulder and drinking the looking back. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "When did you wake up?" "Huh? You're awake?" The corners of Shiman Linglan's mouth curled up smugly. "Sea of bitterness. 1 day is enough." "1 day?" Han Fei raised his eyebrows. He believed that he was very fast, but even so, more than 3 months had passed. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, passing the sea of bitterness in 1 day. Even a dominator can't be as fast as you. Have you secretly mastered some secret? Shiman Linglan smiled slyly. Don't ask. I won't tell you even if you ask. Han Fei laughed. Okay. However, don't drink too much. I have juice here. It's sweet. As they spoke, the two of them got up. Shiman Linglan said, "Senior sisters don't seem to have any signs of waking up." Han Fei said, "They cultivate while tempering their hearts with the sea of bitterness. They will wake up when the time is right. And they will be very strong." The principle of the Void Temple was to not interfere in the path of others. Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus chose the sea of bitterness for their own reasons. Besides, at this moment, both of them were circulating techniques in their bodies. Only Han Fei knew that it was the operation of the God-fiend body. However, unlike him and the demon god, they were walking the path of the God-fiend body as independent individuals. Han Fei didn't know how they walked this path, but if they walked it, two powerful sea-quelling gods might be born at once. Outside the sea of bitterness, when Han Fei and Shiman Linglan came out, the death god was drinking tea leisurely outside the sea of bitterness. Han Fei didn't know what kind of life form the death god was in, nor did he know if he could really taste tea. The moment Han Fei and Shiman Linglan came out, the death god smiled faintly. "Sure enough, you didn't choose the Tao of all living beings." Han Fei said, "Senior, you didn't choose it either." The death god chuckled. "You and I are immortal in the first place. If we embark on the path of all living beings, there will only be torture in our lives. We can't die even if we want to. And we'll have no emotions. Then, what's the difference between being immortal and being dead? Therefore, I didn't think you would embark on this path from the beginning." Shiman Linglan couldn't help but look at Han Fei. She didn't speak, but she cast a questioning look at him. The death god said, "The last piece of primordial mist is yours." Han Fei waved his hand, and a black hole appeared. Han Fei couldn't help but cup his hands. "Thank you, Senior Death God." Since he didn't take the path of all living beings, Han Fei naturally couldn't stay in the sea of bitterness for long. When he entered this black hole space with Shiman Linglan, Han Fei found that this was a path to an extremely remote Star River. Here, there was indeed a large area of primordial mist. Shiman Linglan asked, "What is the Tao of all living beings?" Han Fei smiled and didn't hide it. It's a path destined to be lonely. Once you embark on it, it's probably similar to transforming into the heavenly Tao. Shiman Linglan's face changed slightly. The heavenly Tao is heartless. You can't take that path. Han Fei grinned and said, "Don't worry. Why would I embark on this path? This is not my style." Han Fei believed that since he still had the fruit of creation, he would definitely not walk the path of all living beings. Hearing Han Fei's answer, Shiman Linglan was relieved. Another moment later, Han Fei began to condense purple qi divine crystals in the primordial purple qi. It seemed to be a huge primordial mist, but in fact, Han Fei had only obtained 13 purple qi divine crystals. Of course, this number was already a lot. After all, just one of them could make a powerful sea-quelling god like Shiman Linglan awaken the power of her bloodline. Han Fei took out 16 purple qi divine crystals at once. Perhaps because it was more difficult for a dominator to activate the power of his bloodline, Han Fei swallowed 6 purple qi divine crystals at once. In the blink of an eye, the qi and blood in Han Fei's body soared to the sky. The boundless qi and blood quickly spread out, covering the huge primordial mist in the end. Han Fei's bloodline began to tremble violently. The figure of the giant in the darkness appeared in his eyes again. He couldn't see the person's face clearly. He was red all over, and endless blood-colored patterns circulated on his body. This time, Han Fei took a closer look. Those blood-colored patterns were the manifestation of Tao patterns. Bang! Suddenly, the qi and blood in the giant's body seemed to escape out of his body, soaring to the sky and shaking the heavens and the earth. Endless qi and blood spread infinitely. Han Fei tried to see clearly, but the scene in front of him began to slowly fade. Huff. Han Fei didn't dare to be negligent. He opened his mouth again and swallowed the remaining 10 purple qi divine crystals. Only then did the scene in front of him become clear again. This time, Han Fei clearly saw that the so-called qi and blood were not ordinary qi and blood at all. There were countless great Tao patterns, like extremely dense runes. Han Fei couldn't help being surprised. How many Tao runes were contained in the giant's body? Even the qi and blood that escaped from his body were made of Tao patterns. At this moment, the giant shook the boundless darkness with a single punch. Therefore, as the force of the punch spread out, wherever the power spread, the darkness collapsed, and light was born from the darkness. The light was abnormally dazzling and drowned the giant in the light in the blink of an eye. In the face of this light power, Han Fei suddenly came back to his senses. The moment he came back to his senses, Han Fei discovered that his qi and blood were transforming. Infinite qi and blood swallowed the primordial purple qi in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, his qi and blood were mutating, producing countless Tao patterns. Han Fei seemed to understand something, and an extremely terrifying inheritance appeared in his mind. Name: Heavenly Tao Incarnation. Introduction: This is a supreme technique that someone comprehended after forcibly absorbing the heavenly Tao into his body. Humans can be the heavenly Tao, but the heavenly Tao is not human. As one day passed in the mortal world, an instant passed in the heavens. No matter what realm you are in, you must not use this secret technique for more than a day. Otherwise, your temperament gradually turns cold, and you will be in danger of transforming into the heavenly Tao. At that time you won't be merciful, because all living beings die, won't worry about all living beings, because of the dark world, and will finally completely transform into the heavenly Tao. Realm, first level, 10,000 blood body. Effect, the Tao comes from the heart, and the Qi and blood can evolve into 10,000 Taos. It can temporarily fuse 10,000 Taos into one body and erupt with the most fundamental power in the world. Remarks, no matter what realm you are in, you must not use this secret method for more than a day. Well, this was a bloodline inheritance secret method. Furthermore, this secret technique was extremely similar to the Tao of all living beings, but it was more controllable than all living beings. Its final state should be basically the same as the effect of the fruit of creation, assimilating the world. Yes, someone had once reached such a realm and passed this technique down in the bloodline of the human race. Han Fei seemed to be able to feel that the person who created this technique seemed a little unwilling. It seemed that the path in front of him was very limited. He definitely didn't want to transform into the heavenly Tao, but the technique he created was a technique to transform into the heavenly Tao. This meant that this person didn't have many choices. Even though he knew that this technique was very dangerous, he needed to use it to increase his strength. Han Fei's heart sank. At such a level, he still had to create such a technique. Did he encounter some tricky problems? Buzz. As Han Fei punched the endless deep space, his heart trembled slightly. The first level of this secret technique has increased my combat power by more than 30%. If it were before, when he wasn't a dominator, increasing his combat power by 30% was really nothing. There were many secret techniques that could increase it by several times. However, at this moment, he was already a dominator, a supreme dominator. 2. Be able to increase his combat power by 30%, this was definitely an extremely terrifying secret technique. Besides, this was only the first level of this secret technique. It seemed that there should be a second level. Han Fei knew that if he went to the chaotic era now to collect more purple qi, divine crystals, he should have a chance to comprehend the next level. However, he instinctively resisted. This kind of secret technique was not what he wanted. Just like the Tao of all living beings, who knew if there would be any after effects if he used such a secret technique? Besides, if he wanted to use this secret technique to become stronger, the corresponding sacrifice would definitely be greater. This 10,000 blood body was fine, but when he really reached the realm of the heavenly Tao incarnation mentioned in this technique, who knew if he would really transform into the heavenly Tao? Therefore, Han Fei didn't intend to continue to pursue this technique. Compared to this technique, he was looking forward to the God-fiend body. Anyway, it was to improve himself. If the God-fiend body could work out, it would be a choice. It wasn't like he was going to be doomed. There was no need for him to take this risk. Han Fei immediately retracted his qi and blood and dispersed the power of the 10,000 blood body. At this moment, Shiman Linglan looked a little worried. Is this the power of bloodline? Han Fei nodded slightly. Yes. It's a bloodline inheritance, but I haven't fully comprehended it. Seeing this, Shiman Linglan hurriedly said, then should we try another way? You just now gave me a very unfamiliar feeling. That feeling is a little like eldest senior brother. Han Fei's heart trembled slightly. Even Shiman Linglan could discover it? It seemed that he'd better not use this secret technique. Although it was a pity. It was better than losing himself. Hanfei nodded slightly. Don't worry. It's just that the Dao runes covered my real self. It's not a big problem. However, there's indeed no need to pursue the purple Qi divine crystal. Shiman Linglan nodded. Okay. They can't put this burden all on you and expect you to become infinitely stronger. The Sea of Stars belongs to the myriad races after all, not yours. Also, if you die one day, or become like just now forever, my life will be meaningless. Hanfei raised his eyebrows. Shiman Linglan's words were vaguely threatening. He hurriedly comforted her. No, look at what you're saying. I definitely won't become like that. There were pros and cons to this journey. The pros were that he had an additional secret technique that could increase his combat power by less than 30%. The disadvantage was that this secret technique was too dangerous. If possible, Hanfei really wanted to understand the third level of the path of invincibility. Unfortunately, so far, he only knew that the First Supreme had reached this realm alone. Even Songtian was only on the second level. Therefore, he had no clue about this matter at all. At this moment, it was not in his consideration. Now, Hanfei had unveiled the secret of the Tao of all living beings. He had dug out the power of his bloodline, had no clue about the path of invincibility, and didn't know how to go down with the godfiend body. Hanfei thought for a long time and slowly said, let's go back to the sea realm. Return to the sea realm? Shiman Linglan was a little surprised. Was there any place worth going to in the sea realm now? Yes, the primordial tower. West Wilderness, Ferocious God Valley, Primordial Tower. Hanfei and Shiman Linglan quietly appeared here, and the two of them appeared directly at the top of the Primordial Tower. Huh? You've become a dominator? Have you mastered the supreme divine technique? The Primordial Tower was very shocked by Hanfei's sudden arrival and the change in Hanfei's strength. Wasn't he just a peak-level great monarch? How did he suddenly become a dominator? Wasn't his growth too fast? Hanfei said casually, why are you so surprised? Do you even need to ask this question? The Primordial Tower almost exclaimed, heavens! I didn't expect you to really clear the supreme path, and it only took you thousands of years. No wonder. That guy said that someone would come in the end. I really didn't expect you to succeed. Hanfei was puzzled. Who was that guy? The Primordial Tower tried to calm down and said, you'll find out when you take a look. You're here for the primordial mystery, right? Hanfei nodded. Only one of the 6 trials of the Primordial Tower had almost never been open to the public. The bandit god was very powerful in the past and had never succeeded. Hanfei didn't have much hope at first. After all, although the Primordial Tower could narrowly block the power of a dominator, it needed to borrow the power of the entire West Wilderness. Therefore, his trial might not be helpful to him. Since it wouldn't waste any time, he came to try his luck. But judging from the reaction of the Primordial Tower, it seemed to be a big secret. Hanfei said, open the door. I'll take a look. There's no need to open the door. I'll take you straight there. Buzz. Hanfei and the others didn't feel any change, but the body of the Primordial Tower trembled slightly. In the next moment, they saw a boundless sea of sand from the tower. However, this sea of sand was completely different from the sea of sand on the surface of the West Wilderness. The sea of sand here was accompanied by a sandstorm and was gray. Looking from inside the primordial tower, the vision was not good. Just as Han Fei and Shiman Linglan were about to leave the primordial tower, said Han Fei, "There are no strong masters in the sea realm now. This is the last power of the sea realm. Don't use it unless you have to."